He laughed, "Keep borrowing sugar and folks will think you want me." Then she whispered, "I don't use sugar." Elias Mercer had learned to set one plate at supper, without looking at the empty side of the table. After 9 years alone on Briar Creek Ranch, his hands knew the habit better than his heart did. One tin plate, one fork, one chipped coffee cup, one chair pulled close to the stove while the other stayed pushed beneath the table, gathering dust in the quiet corner where late sunlight rarely reached. Outside, the Montana wind moved through the cottonwoods with a dry whisper, dragging the smell of sage and horse sweat across the yard. Inside, Elias ate beans and cornbread in a kitchen that was clean enough to shame a church widow, and lifeless enough to make a man forget what laughter sounded like. Old Blue, his gray-muzzled cattle dog, slept beside the stove with his paws twitching now and then, chasing some dream that required less loneliness than waking life. "You're the only soul I know who can sleep through my cooking," Elias said. Blue opened one eye, judged the comment unworthy, and shut it again. Elias almost smiled. Almost. He had been a husband once, a father almost. Folks in the county knew that much, though most had the mercy not to say it. His wife, Maren, had died in a winter fever before their child ever took a breath. The same January storm that buried the trail to town had buried the best part of Elias Mercer with her. After that, he stopped inviting people in. Not rudely. Elias was never a cruel man. He helped mend fences when asked. He lent a hand with calving. He tipped his hat to ladies outside the mercantile and stood quiet at every burial the town suffered. But when the work was done, he rode home alone, shut his door, and let the silence tell him he was safe. A man could not lose what he refused to hold. That was what he believed until the day Miriam Vale came rattling down the road in a wagon with one wobbly wheel, 2 trunks, a milk cow, 6 hens, and a look on her face that dared the whole territory to doubt her. Elias first saw her from his porch in late April, when the snow had only just given up its grip on the shaded gullies. She was driving the team herself, back straight, bonnet ribbons whipping in the wind, one hand firm on the reins as if she had been born arguing with stubborn animals. The old claim east of his land had sat empty for 3 years. Folks called it the Alder Place, though no alder had lived long enough on it to make the name stick. It had a small cabin, a leaning shed, a dry garden patch, and a fence line that sagged between Elias' ranch and the new widow's ground like a tired old rope. Blue reached the fence before Elias did. That was the first strange thing. The dog usually met strangers with a low growl and the disappointed expression of an old preacher hearing cards shuffled on Sunday. But when Miriam climbed down from her wagon near the crooked boundary post, Blue trotted straight to her, tail wagging like a foolish pup. "Well, aren't you a handsome gentleman?" Miriam said, bending to scratch behind his ears. Elias stopped 10 steps from the fence, offended on Blue's behalf and a little on his own. "He doesn't take to strangers," he called. Miriam looked up. She was younger than he expected, perhaps 30, with brown hair pinned beneath a plain bonnet and eyes the color of dark coffee before dawn. There was dust on her skirt, a smudge on her cheek, and no sign of embarrassment about either. "Then maybe he's wiser than most," she said. "Maybe he knows I won't stay a stranger long." Elias had no answer ready for that. He tipped his hat instead. "Elias Mercer." "Miriam Vale." Her voice held no tremble, but her gloved hand stayed a little too tight around the wagon rail. "You taking the Alder Place?" he asked. "I bought the claim papers proper, so I suppose the place is taking me. That cabin needs work. So do most things worth keeping." Blue leaned harder into her hand, traitor that he was. Elias glanced toward the old cabin. "You got family coming?" "No." "Hired man?" "No." "Someone helping you unload?" Miriam's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Mr. Mercer, if you ask one more way whether I came here alone, I'll have to start charging you for the answer." Elias felt heat touch the back of his neck. He had not meant insult. He had only seen enough frontier hardship to know how quickly pride could become a grave. "I didn't mean to pry." I know. Her face softened by half an inch, which somehow made it harder to look away. But I did come alone, and I intend to manage alone. There it was, the kind of sentence a person said when it had been said against them too many times. Elias nodded once. Then I wish you good weather. And if I don't get it, you'll get Montana. That time she did smile. It was small, quick, and gone before a man could make too much of it. But Elias carried it back to his barn with him like a coal tucked in a cold pocket. For 3 days he watched without admitting he was watching. Miriam hauled trunks into the cabin by herself. She patched one broken shutter with a board too short for the job. She chased her hens out of the shed twice and lost the argument both times. On the 4th morning, Elias saw her standing in the yard with a hammer in one hand and a bent nail in the other, staring at the porch step as if it had personally wronged her. He almost went over. Then he remembered the way she had said she intended to manage alone. So he stayed on his side of the fence and let pride have its own weather. That afternoon, just as Elias was brushing down his bay horse in the barn, Blue gave one sharp bark and bolted toward the yard. Elias stepped outside. Miriam Vale stood at his gate holding an empty tin cup. She looked as if she had walked there with great purpose and was now regretting every step. "Afternoon," Elias said. "Afternoon," she lifted the cup slightly. "I hate to trouble you. Most folks say that right before they trouble me." Her eyes narrowed, but there was humor in them. "Then I'll be original and say I came to borrow something." "What is it?" "Coffee." Elias looked at the cup. "You walked a half-mile for coffee." "I misjudged my supply." "On your 4th day." "I have many talents. Judging coffee is apparently not among them." Blue sat at her feet as if she had brought him news from heaven. Elias opened the gate. "Come on, then." She stepped into the yard, but not too far, careful to remain a visitor and not a woman accepting help. Elias noticed that about her right away. Miriam Vale had a way of standing near kindness as though it were a stove too hot to touch. In the kitchen, he filled her cup from a sack in the pantry. The room seemed suddenly aware of itself. The single plate drying near the basin, the one chair by the stove, the second chair pushed away, the air too still for a house meant to hold living people. Miriam noticed, but she did not stare. That made Elias grateful. "You take sugar with it?" he asked. "No," she said quickly, "just coffee." "Good, I don't use much sugar." "Neither do I." The answer came too fast, but Elias let it pass. She thanked him and left with the cup held close, Blue following her all the way to the gate. The next week she came for flour. The week after that, a handful of nails. Then a bit of lantern oil. By May's end, Elias had begun listening for her footsteps before Blue barked. He told himself it was because neighbors ought to look out for one another. He told himself a great many things in those days. But on the first warm morning of June, when Miriam came up the road with an empty jar in her hand and sunlight catching the loose strands of hair near her cheek, Elias found himself already standing in the doorway. She paused at the porch step. "Mr. Mercer." "Mrs. Vale." "I only need a little sugar." He leaned one shoulder against the frame, unable to stop the smile that tugged at him. "Keep borrowing sugar," he said, "and folks will think you want me." Miriam looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Then her smile trembled into something braver than teasing. "I don't use sugar," she said. And for the first time in 9 years, the silence inside Elias Mercer's house did not feel safe at all. It felt empty. Elias Mercer had faced blizzards that buried cattle standing upright, river crossings that tried to take his horse out from under him, and one calving season so bitter it left his hands cracked for 3 months. None of those had prepared him for a woman standing on his porch with an empty jar, admitting she did not use the very thing she had come to borrow. Miriam Vale did not look away after she said it. That made the moment worse and better both. Her cheeks had gone pink beneath the brim of her bonnet, but her chin stayed lifted, as if embarrassment could come visit but would not be invited to sit down. Elias looked from the jar to her face, then back to the jar, because a jar was easier to understand than a widow with brave eyes. "You do not use sugar," he repeated. "No. Not in coffee. No. Tea. I do not much care for tea. Baking. I burn biscuits with or without sugar, so I see no reason to waste it." A laugh caught in Elias' chest before he could stop it. It came out rough, rusty, and surprised him more than it surprised her. Blue, lying under the porch bench, lifted his head as if a stranger had entered the yard. Miriam's mouth curved. "There it is." "What?" "I wondered if you remembered how." "How to what?" "Laugh." The answer landed softly, but it landed deep. Elias stepped back from the doorway and turned toward the pantry before she could see too much on his face. "I reckon I keep sugar whether you use it or not. For all your guests. For all my empty jars, apparently." She followed him inside, though only as far as the kitchen threshold. She had done that every visit since the first. Elias had noticed. She never came in like a woman comfortable taking space in another person's house. She stayed near the door, one hand on whatever she had brought to borrow, eyes careful not to linger on the lonely parts of the room. But that morning, after her confession, the room seemed to hold its breath. Elias took down the sugar tin from the shelf. It was fuller than it ought to be for a man who drank coffee black and had no taste for sweets. He had bought extra the last 2 times he went to town, telling himself it was practical to keep stores. A ranch was no place to run short. Now, with Miriam watching from the doorway, the lie looked as plain as his own hands. "You bought that recently," she said. He stilled. "Did I?" The tin was near empty 2 visits ago. "You keep inventory on my pantry, Mrs. Vale." "No," she said, "only on my foolishness." He set the tin on the table and filled her jar halfway. "Seems to me foolishness has kept you from walking all the way to town." "It has kept me from plenty of things," she said. There was a quiet under her words that made Elias look up. Miriam's eyes had moved to the second chair beneath the table, the one he never used, the one he had stopped dusting properly until recently, when he found himself wiping it down without thinking before her visits. She noticed that too. He hated how much she noticed. He liked it even more. "You do not have to explain," he said. "I know." "Then why did you?" Her gloved fingers tightened around the jar. "Because you made the joke first." "That was poor manners on my part." "No," Miriam said, looking at him directly now. "It was kindness dressed as poor manners. I recognized it." Elias had no practice receiving words like that. He put the lid on the jar and slid it across the table. "There you are." She took it but did not leave. Blue rose and patted inside, settling at her feet as if he had been waiting for the right moment to declare his loyalty in public. "Traitor," Elias muttered. Miriam looked down at the dog. "He has excellent judgment." "He used to." She laughed, and the sound filled the kitchen so naturally that for one sharp second Elias could imagine it had always belonged there. That was the danger of it. Not that she came borrowing things. Not that she smiled on his porch. Not even that she had confessed the sugar was never about sugar. The danger was how quickly his house remembered it had been built for more than one voice. Miriam stepped back. "I should go." "You always say that like someone's pulling you." "Something usually is." "What?" Her smile faded a little, pride mostly. Elias nodded. He knew that animal. It had lived with him longer than Blue had. At the porch, Miriam paused and looked toward the sagging fence line between their properties. One post leaned badly near the low wash, almost touching the grass. The rails had warped after spring rains, leaving a gap wide enough for a determined calf or a foolish woman's hens. "That fence is worse than it was yesterday," she said. "Fences do not improve out of shame." "I suppose not. I meant to fix it last fall." Did you? No. Why? Elias leaned against the porch rail. Didn't have anybody on the other side worth keeping out. Miriam's eyes softened before she could guard them. And now? Now I reckon there are hens to consider. My hens are respectable. One of them was in my barley shed this morning. That was Ruth. You named your hen Ruth. She looks like a Ruth. She looks like a thief. She has ambitions. Elias shook his head, but he was smiling again. It seemed to be happening without his permission now, a troublesome habit brought on by empty jars and brown-eyed widows. Miriam held up the sugar. Thank you. For the sugar you do not use. For not making me wish I had lied better. He watched her cross the yard, Blue following until the gate. At the fence, she turned once just briefly, not long enough to be called lingering, long enough to be remembered. After she went, the kitchen settled back into silence. But it was not the same silence. Elias stood in the middle of the room with the sugar tin still open on the table and the smell of dust, coffee, and warm pine all around him. He looked at the second chair, then at the shelf where one cup sat beside an empty space that suddenly seemed accusing. He shut the tin harder than necessary. Nothing has changed, he told Blue when the dog returned. Blue sat down and stared at him. Do not look at me like that. Blue sighed. I mean it. The dog put his head on his paws. Elias lasted until noon before he went to the barn and sharpened the post-hole digger. By late afternoon, he had loaded tools into the wagon, though he told himself it was only because the boundary fence needed work and the weather looked fair. A practical job, a neighborly duty, nothing to do with a woman who did not use sugar. He hitched the bay and drove toward the line between their claims. Miriam was already there. She stood beside the leaning post with sleeves rolled to her elbows, a hammer tucked into her belt, hair escaping its pins in stubborn curls at her temples. A rooster with a red comb and the confidence of a territorial sheriff strutted nearby, glaring at Elias as if prepared to write a complaint. Miriam looked at the wagon, then at the tools. I see you came armed. That rooster yours. Solomon, he looks unfriendly. He is discerning. He chased me last week. You were on my land. I was returning your lantern oil. Solomon values boundaries. The rooster took 3 aggressive steps toward Elias. Elias pointed at him. That bird is touched in the head. Miriam pressed her lips together, failing badly to hide her smile. You came about the fence. Seemed half mine. It is. Then I figured I ought to do half the complaining. Fair enough. They worked until the sun slid low and gold across the prairie. Miriam proved better with a hammer than Elias expected and worse with a saw than she claimed. Elias dug the deeper holes. She measured rails by eye and was right more often than not. Blue lay in the shade, supervising no one, while Solomon circled the work site like a small, feathered outlaw. At one point, Miriam reached for a rail at the same moment Elias did. Their hands touched. Both pulled back. Neither spoke. The quiet that followed was not empty. It was full of all the things neither one of them had yet earned the courage to say. Miriam turned to the post and hammered a nail with unnecessary force. Elias hid his smile by reaching for another rail. When the first section stood straight, she stepped back with her hands on her hips. There, that should keep Ruth from your barley. Ruth will find crime elsewhere. She is resourceful. She is poultry. Even poultry can have dreams, Mr. Mercer. He laughed again, easier this time. Miriam looked at him sideways, twice in one day. What? You laughed twice. Do not make a tally of it. You made a tally of my sugar. He could not deny it, and she knew he could not. Her smile turned gentle enough to trouble him. The sun lowered behind the hills, spilling amber light over the repaired rails. For a moment, The fence did not look like a thing dividing one claim from another. It looked like something two lonely people had set straight together. Miriam seemed to think the same, because her face grew quiet. "My husband used to say I had a habit of fixing things I was angry at," she said. Elias leaned on the post. "Were you angry at the fence?" "No," she looked toward her cabin, small and stubborn against the evening. "I was angry that everyone who told me this would be hard was right." The honesty came so suddenly that Elias did not know how to hold it. Miriam swallowed and looked back at the rail. "I can manage. I know I can. But some evenings I get inside that cabin and the walls sound louder than they ought to." Elias understood that better than any man should. He took off his hat, turned it once in his hands, then set it back on his head. "My house does that too," he said. Miriam looked at him. The words had cost him. She seemed to know it and did not make him pay more. Instead, she nodded once. "Then I suppose it is a good thing the fence needed fixing." He met her eyes across the straightened rail. "I suppose it is." Blue rose and pressed himself between them, tired of being ignored. Miriam bent to rub his head. Elias watched her hand move gently over the old dog's ears, and for one foolish second, he wondered what it would be like to come home and find that kindness waiting there without excuse. Then Solomon charged him. Elias jumped back so fast his boot caught on a root, and he grabbed the fence post to keep from falling. Miriam burst into laughter, bright and helpless and entirely without apology. "That bird is a menace," Elias said. "He is small. He is evil. He is protective. He is plotting my burial." Miriam laughed harder, one hand pressed to her waist, and Elias found himself laughing with her, even as the rooster strutted away victorious. By the time the evening cooled, they had repaired only 10 yards of fence, though both pretended it was a respectable amount. Miriam gathered her hammer. Elias loaded the tools. Neither moved quickly. At last, she lifted the jar of sugar from where she had left it on a stump. "I nearly forgot this." "You do not need it." "No," she said softly, "I do not." Still, she held it close as she walked home. And Elias watched her go, understanding with a strange ache in his chest that a woman could carry away something she had no use for, and still leave a man feeling as if she had taken the most important thing in the house. That night he set one plate at supper. Then, without thinking, he set down a second cup. He stared at it for a long while. Blue stared too. Finally, Elias took the cup back to the shelf. But he did not put it where it had been. He set it beside his own. By the middle of June, Elias Mercer had begun keeping sugar in the house like a man expecting winter. It sat full in the pantry tin, though he still took his coffee black and had not baked a cake since the year before his life went quiet. He bought a fresh sack during his next trip to town and told Mr. Prout at the mercantile it was for preserving fruit, despite having no fruit worth preserving and no desire to begin. Mr. Prout looked at him over his spectacles. "You preserving something, Elias?" "That is what I said." "What kind?" "The kind that needs sugar." The old storekeeper wisely decided a man had the right to be foolish without witnesses. Elias rode home with the sugar tied behind his saddle and felt ridiculous the whole way. Miriam Vale did not come for sugar that week. She came for a hand saw. Blue announced her arrival with 3 happy barks and a spin near the gate, which was more excitement than he gave beef bones and thunderstorms combined. Elias came out of the barn wiping his hands on a rag, trying not to look pleased and failing by enough that Miriam noticed. "Your dog has better manners than you," she said. "My dog has lower standards." "Only where you are concerned." She stood beside her wagon in a faded blue dress, sleeves rolled, bonnet hanging down her back by its ribbons. There was a smudge of flour on her chin, though Elias knew better than to mention it too quickly. A woman like Miriam Vale might accept help under protest, but she would not forgive being studied like a problem. "What happened to your saw?" he asked. "It has become decorative." Broke. It and I reached a disagreement. Who won? The shed wall so far. Elias walked to the tool bench and brought out his saw. What are you cutting? A new brace for the chicken coop. Ruth planning another escape. Ruth has followers now. That hen is a bad influence. She is a leader. She is poultry with criminal leanings. Miriam took the saw, but her smile lingered after her hand closed around the handle. You talk more when you are pretending not to enjoy company. Elias looked toward the barn, where a saddle blanket suddenly seemed worth inspecting. I talk plenty. To horses and dogs, maybe. They listen better than most people. Perhaps they ask less. Perhaps. The small word slipped between them and softened the morning. Miriam glanced toward the repaired section of fence, then beyond it to the stretch still sagging across the lower pasture. We did not finish. No. Tomorrow. Elias looked back at her. You asking or telling? I am allowing you the dignity of believing you have a choice. Blue wagged his tail as though in support. Elias folded the rag slowly. Tomorrow, then. The next day, Miriam arrived with gloves, a lunch pail, and Solomon the rooster following at a distance like a suspicious foreman. They worked the fence until the sun stood high and bright. Elias dug post holes while Miriam stripped old wire from the rails and told him stories about Illinois without meaning to give away how much she missed parts of it. Her husband, Aaron Vale, had been a schoolteacher. That surprised Elias. He had imagined a farmer, perhaps, or a store clerk like the husband from some widow's stories. But Aaron had taught letters to children in a one-room schoolhouse and kept books stacked higher than sense. He had soft hands, Miriam said, twisting wire loose from a nail. People thought that meant he was weak. He was not. He could stand in front of 20 children with mud on their boots and mischief in their bones and make every one of them open a reader. That takes courage. Elias set his digger into the soil. Sounds like a patient man. He was. Were you? No. That answer came so quickly he laughed. Miriam smiled down at the rail. He used to say I could argue with rain for falling downward. Could you? I never lost. Elias looked at the blue sky. Rain still falls downward, Mrs. Vale. Only because I have not taken the matter up recently. They ate lunch beneath the cottonwood near the fence, beans wrapped in cloth, cold cornbread, and 2 apples from Elias' cellar. Miriam sat on the grass with her knees tucked to one side, hat shading her face. Blue rested his head on her boot with the lazy certainty of a dog who had chosen his person and saw no reason to ask permission. You have stolen my dog, Elias said. I have improved his prospects. He used to be loyal. He still is. He simply divided the territory. A dog cannot have 2 homes. Miriam's gaze flicked toward the 2 claims, the fence between them, the road stretching to town. Can't he? Elias had no easy answer. The afternoon warmed around them. Grasshoppers snapped through the weeds. Far off, a hawk circled over the ridge. For a while neither spoke, and it was not uncomfortable. Elias had forgotten silence could be shared without turning sharp. Miriam broke a piece of cornbread in half and offered some to Blue. He will beg forever now, Elias warned. He already looked hungry. He looks hungry after supper. Maybe you underfeed him. That dog eats better than I do. Then perhaps I should bring you cornbread next time instead. The words were simple, friendly, neighborly, but they landed in Elias' chest with the weight of something domestic and dangerous. Next time. She had said it like there would be one. He was saved from answering by Solomon marching too close to his boot and pecking the leather. Elias jerked his foot back. That bird has made a study of hatred. He senses fear. He senses I am reasonable enough not to kick a lady's rooster into the creek. Your restraint honors you. My restraint is wearing thin. Miriam laughed and Blue thumped his tail. If you believe love sometimes starts with a borrowed saw, a crooked fence, and a dog who knows better than people do, stay with this story. Some hearts do not open all at once. They open in ordinary ways, one quiet visit at a time. By late afternoon, clouds gathered on the western rim of the sky. Elias noticed them first, dark-bellied and fast-moving, piling above the ridge with the heavy look of summer weather turning mean. Miriam followed his gaze. Storm. Looks like I should get home. You have time if you go now. She nodded and began gathering the tools, but the first gust came hard enough to flatten the grass and send dust spinning along the fence. Blue rose, ears back. Solomon, for once in his proud life, decided caution was not cowardice and ran toward Miriam's wagon. Thunder cracked across the hills. Miriam looked toward her cabin. The distance was not far, but the sky had gone green-gray in the west, and wind was already pulling at the hem of her dress. Elias took the saw from her hands. Come to the house. I can make it. You might. Her eyes sharpened. I did not ask for rescue. I did not offer rescue, I offered shelter. Rain struck then, sudden and hard, slanting across the pasture in silver sheets. Miriam flinched despite herself. Elias saw it, she saw that he saw it. For one breath, pride stood between them like another fence post. Then Blue barked once and ran toward the house, apparently done watching humans debate foolishness beneath a breaking sky. Miriam lifted her chin, only until it passes. Of course. They ran. By the time they reached Elias' porch, rain had soaked the shoulders of Miriam's dress and darkened Elias' shirt to his skin. Solomon took refuge under the wagon and looked personally betrayed by the weather. Blue shook himself violently in the doorway, spraying both of them. Blue, Elias said. Miriam wiped rain from her cheek and laughed. He says you offered shelter too late. Inside, Elias built up the stove while Miriam stood near the door, dripping onto the floorboards and pretending not to shiver. He fetched a dry blanket from the trunk in the back room and held it out. She hesitated. Miriam, he said quietly. It was the first time he had used her given name. Her eyes lifted to his. The storm battered the roof, loud enough to fill the silence he had left behind the word. After a moment she took the blanket. Thank you, Elias. His name sounded different in her voice, less like a thing he had carried and more like something returned to him. He turned away before he could make too much of it and set coffee on the stove. Beans are all I have hot. Beans are respectable. And cornbread from yesterday. Less respectable but welcome. You said you burn biscuits. I did not say I was above eating another person's. The kitchen warmed slowly while the storm threw rain against the windows. Elias set 2 plates on the table without thinking. He only noticed when Miriam noticed. His hand stilled above the second fork. I can stand, she said softly, misunderstanding his pause. No, he placed the fork beside the plate. Sit. She did. The chair that had waited 9 years took her weight without complaint. They ate while thunder rolled over the roof and rain blurred the windows until the world outside looked like a memory. Miriam kept the blanket around her shoulders, her damp hair curling loose at her temples. Elias poured coffee for both of them and did not ask about sugar. For a while they spoke of safe things. Fence rails, weather, Ruth's crimes, Solomon's poor character, Blue's betrayal. Then thunder cracked so close it shook the window frame and Miriam's hand tightened around her cup. Elias lowered his fork. Storms trouble you? No. She answered too fast. He waited. Miriam closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, the fight had gone out of her face. Yes. Outside, rain beat the roof like 1,000 hurried footsteps. Aaron died during a storm, she said. Not from the storm. Fever had him already, but the rain was so hard that night I could not hear whether he was breathing unless I put my ear close to his mouth. Afterward, every storm sounded like the room where I lost him. Elias sat very still. They were sorrows a person should not touch carelessly. "I am sorry," he said. Miriam looked at the coffee in her cup. "People kept telling me I was young, as if youth is a broom that sweeps grief out faster. It does not." "No," her voice thinned but did not break. "It only gives other people permission to rush you." Elias knew something about that too. Not the same grief, never the same, but close enough to recognize the shape. "My wife died in January," he said. Miriam lifted her eyes. He had not planned to speak of Marin. He almost stopped. But the storm had closed the world down to the kitchen, the stove, the dog by the hearth, and the woman sitting in the chair that had been empty too long. "She was 7 months gone with our child," he continued. "Fever took her first. The baby never drew breath. I buried them when the ground was so frozen we had to build a fire over it before digging." Miriam's hand moved across the table, then stopped halfway, asking without asking. Elias looked at it. Then he covered her fingers with his own. It was not a lover's touch. Not yet. It was two wounded people standing at the edge of the same dark river and finding, to their surprise, a plank between them. "I thought if I stayed alone," he said, "nothing could be taken from me again." Miriam's thumb shifted beneath his hand, barely a movement. "Did it work?" "For a while I thought so. And now?" He looked at the sugar tin on the shelf. Full, waiting, useless and necessary. "Now I am not so sure." Her eyes shone in the lamplight, but she smiled a little. "That sounds inconvenient." "It has been." "I apologize." "No, you do not." "No," she admitted, "I do not." The storm lasted past supper and into the dark. When the rain finally softened, the yard had become mud and the road a black ribbon under a clouded moon. Elias hitched the wagon and insisted on driving her home. This time, Miriam did not argue long. At her cabin, he walked her to the porch. Water dripped from the eaves. Inside, the small room glowed with the lamp he had helped her fill the week before. Her house looked stubborn, yes, but less lonely with her standing in the doorway. She turned to him, blanket folded in her arms. "I will return this." "Keep it until the next storm." "That sounds like an excuse." "It is." Her smile came slow. "Good night, Elias." "Good night, Miriam." He rode home under a clearing sky with Blue beside him on the wagon seat. Both of them damp, tired, and changed in ways Elias did not yet have words for. When he entered his kitchen, the 2 plates still sat on the table. He should have cleared them. Instead, he stood there a long while, looking at the chair where Miriam had sat while the storm told its old story against the roof, and for once did not win. Then he washed both plates, dried both cups, and placed them side by side on the shelf. After the storm, Miriam Vale did not come to borrow anything for 6 days. Elias Mercer told himself this was good. A sensible man appreciated peace. A careful man welcomed distance. A widower who had already learned the cost of loving did not stand at his porch rail morning and evening, watching a road because a woman might appear on it with an empty jar, a borrowed blanket, or some other excuse too thin to survive daylight. So Elias did not watch the road. He repaired a latch on the barn door. He checked the lower pasture. He sharpened a blade that was already sharp. He counted sacks in the pantry and pretended not to notice the sugar tin every time he opened the cupboard. Blue, having no dignity to protect, watched the road openly. "Suit yourself," Elias told him on the 3rd evening. Blue gave one soft whine. "She has work to do." The dog looked toward Miriam's claim. "So do I." Blue sighed like a disappointed old judge. On the 6th morning, Elias found the folded blanket hanging over the gate between their properties. It had been washed, dried in sun, and tied with a strip of blue ribbon. No note, no borrowed cup, no empty jar, just the blanket returned neatly, as if the storm had been nothing more than weather and not the night both of them had spoken names they usually kept buried. Elias stood at the gate longer than the blanket required. From Miriam's cabin, smoke rose thin and steady, her hens scratched near the shed. Solomon strutted with his usual poor opinion of the world. Miriam herself was nowhere to be seen. He untied the ribbon slowly. Blue sniffed the blanket, then looked up at him. "Yes," Elias muttered, "I know." He carried it inside and placed it over the back of the second chair. Then he removed it. Then he placed it there again. By noon, he had saddled his bay horse with no plan worth defending. He found Miriam in her garden patch, kneeling between crooked rows of beans that looked as uncertain about survival as she pretended not to be. Her sleeves were rolled, her bonnet pushed back, and there was a streak of soil along one cheek. She did not hear him ride up at first. She was humming under her breath, a soft, uneven tune with no proper melody. Elias stopped near the fence and listened. It was not pretty. It was better than pretty. Blue slipped through the lower gap and ran to her before Elias could call him back. Miriam turned at the sound and smiled at the dog first, which Elias decided not to resent. "Good morning, traitor," she said, scratching Blue's head. "He answers to that now," Elias called. Miriam looked up. "Then you have been saying it often." "Only when deserved." She stood brushing soil from her skirt. "Thank you for letting me keep the blanket." "You returned it." "I said thank you for letting me keep it through the storm." "That was days ago." "I am aware." "You avoiding me, Mrs. Vale?" The question came out before he had dressed it in courtesy. Miriam's hand stilled on her skirt. For a moment, Elias wished he could take it back. Not because it was untrue, but because truth had a way of walking into a room muddy and sitting where it liked. "I have been busy," she said. "So have I." "With what?" "Mostly pretending I did not notice." Her mouth almost smiled, then did not. "You should not say things like that." "Why?" "Because they make it difficult to continue pretending." The air between them changed. A meadowlark sang from the fence post, bright and careless. The sound only made the silence around it deeper. Elias rested one hand on his saddle horn. "I have no wish to trouble you." "You do not trouble me." "That might be worse." Miriam looked away toward her cabin. "It is." He dismounted then, tying the horse to the rail before either of them could hide behind distance. Blue settled between the bean rows as if he had arranged the meeting and expected gratitude. "I came because the lower fence still needs work," Elias said. Miriam glanced at him. "Does it?" "Badly. It looked standing yesterday." "Standing is not the same as trustworthy." "No," she said quietly, "it is not." They walked to the lower stretch together, carrying tools from opposite sides like two neighbors performing a practical duty rather than two lonely hearts searching for a safe shape to stand inside. Elias lifted the rails. Miriam held the post steady. Neither spoke much at first. The work helped. A person could hide a trembling thought behind a hammer strike, could bury longing in a post hole, could measure a rail twice while waiting for courage to find its boots. Near midday, Miriam fetched a pail of water from her well and handed Elias the dipper. Their fingers brushed again, and this time neither pulled away quickly. The touch lasted only a breath, but it had the quiet weight of a promise neither had made. "You have soil on your cheek," he said. "I usually do." "May I?" Her eyes lifted. He regretted asking the instant the words were out. It was too familiar, too gentle, too near the line they kept pretending not to see. But Miriam did not step back. She nodded. Elias reached out and brushed the streak of soil from her cheek with his thumb. Her skin was warm from the sun. The whole world seemed to narrow to that single touch, to Blue panting in the grass, to the creak of the cottonwood, to Miriam holding still as if movement might break something tender. "There," he said, his voice low. "Thank you." He let his hand fall. She turned away first, but slowly, and went back to the fence. By late afternoon, the repaired line ran straight from the creek wash to the old cedar post near the road. It no longer looked like neglect. It looked like two stubborn people had argued it into standing. Miriam leaned on her hammer. That should keep Ruth home. It will not. No faith. In Ruth, none. She has character. She has a criminal future. Miriam smiled, and the smile reached him like lamplight under a door. Elias should have gone home then. Instead, he asked, "You riding into town tomorrow?" "I plan to." "Supplies?" "Flour, kerosene, nails, coffee if Mr. Prout has any worth buying." "He will claim it is worth buying whether it is or not." "That is because Mr. Prout loves his merchandise more than truth." "I could ride along." Miriam looked at him with care. "For supplies." "For protection from your rooster if he follows." "Solomon dislikes town." "Town shows rare wisdom in disliking him back." She laughed, then looked toward the road. The humor faded into thoughtfulness. "People will notice." "People notice weather, too. Does not mean it belongs to them." Easy for a man to say. Elias heard the edge in that and did not answer too quickly. Miriam's gaze stayed on the road. When a man rides with a widow, folks call him kind. When a widow rides with a man too often, folks begin measuring her character against their own boredom. I had not thought of it that way. No, most men do not have to. There was no accusation in her voice, only tired truth. Elias took off his hat and turned it in his hands. "Then I will not ride along if it makes trouble for you." Miriam looked back at him. "That is not what I said." "What did you say?" "I said people will notice." Her fingers tightened around the hammer. "I did not say I wanted to live by what they notice." Elias felt something open in his chest, cautious and warm. "Then I will come by after breakfast." "Do not come too early." "I rise before sunup." "I do not." "You run a claim and do not rise before sunup." "I rise when necessary." "Lazy." "Careful, Mr. Mercer. I know where your sugar is kept." "That threat would mean more if you used sugar." Miriam's smile turned soft. "I suppose I use it for one thing." "What is that?" She looked at him long enough to make the question feel like a hand held out over a deep place. "Excuses," she said. Then she gathered her tools and walked toward her cabin. Elias rode home with that word traveling beside him. Excuses. He had built a life out of them. Work was an excuse not to sit with grief. Silence was an excuse not to risk conversation. The empty chair was an excuse called habit. The locked heart was an excuse called wisdom. And now Miriam Vale had walked into his quiet days with empty jars and borrowed things, and somehow made excuses feel like invitations. The next morning he arrived after breakfast, as ordered. Miriam was ready with a list folded in one hand and a basket on her arm. Her dress was plain brown, her bonnet tied neatly, and her expression said she would not be teased about either. Blue leapt into the back of her wagon before Elias had even greeted her. "That dog belongs to me," he said. "He has chosen transportation. He has chosen betrayal. He has chosen comfort." Elias looked at the dog sprawled in the wagon bed. "He used to ride beside me. Perhaps he prefers my company. I am beginning to think everyone does." The words slipped out lightly, but Miriam caught them in both hands. Her eyes softened. "Not everyone," she said, "only the sensible ones." The ride to town took nearly 2 hours, following the dry road past wheat-colored hills and low gullies where wildflowers clung to the last moisture of spring. They talked of practical things at first. Prices, weather, her crooked shed, his stubborn bay, the difference between a useful hen and Ruth, a topic on which Elias held strong opinions. Then the road widened near town, and houses appeared in the distance, pale against the open land. Miriam grew quieter. Elias noticed. "Still time for me to ride ahead," he said. She turned to him. "Do you want to?" "No." "Then do not." So they rode into town together. Pine Hollow was not large enough to keep secrets and not kind enough to ignore them quickly. The mercantile sat beside the blacksmith's shop, with a hitching rail out front and 2 benches for men who claimed to be resting when they were really collecting news. As Elias helped Miriam down from the wagon, Mrs. Bell from the milliner's shop looked through her window, then looked away too late. Mr. Prout saw them enter together and became suddenly interested in stacking tins that had already been stacked. Miriam held her head high. Elias admired her for it. Inside the mercantile, she moved through her list with calm precision. Flour, kerosene, nails, a spool of thread, coffee, no sugar. Elias noticed that. So did Mr. Prout. "No sugar today, Mrs. Vale?" the storekeeper asked with innocent cruelty, or perhaps only innocent foolishness. Miriam's hand paused over the coffee sack. Elias felt the small shift in her before he saw it. "No," she said evenly, "I have enough." Mrs. Bell's sister, standing near the ribbon shelf, glanced toward another woman Elias knew only as the baker's cousin. Their eyes met in the quick way of people setting a match to dry grass. Elias put a sack of sugar on the counter. Miriam looked at him. Mr. Prout blinked. "Need sugar, Elias?" "Seems I do. You never did favor it." "Times change." The baker's cousin made a small sound behind her glove. Miriam's eyes told him he had done something foolish and sweet, and possibly unhelpful. Elias paid for the sugar anyway. Outside, Miriam climbed into the wagon without speaking. Blue rested his head on her knee as they rolled out of town. For a mile, the only sounds were wheels, hooves, and the soft clink of supplies in the back. At last she said, "You did not have to do that." "I know. You may have made it worse." "I know that too." "Then why?" Elias kept his eyes on the road. "Because you stood there alone with everyone looking, and I found I did not care for it." Miriam's breath caught softly. He risked a glance. Her eyes were bright, but she was smiling. "That was foolish," she said. "I have been accused." "And kind." "I have been accused less often." She looked down at Blue, running her hand over his ears. "I came west because everyone back home thought my life was unfinished unless a man put his name beside mine." Elias said nothing. Miriam continued, voice steady but low. "I wanted land with my own name, work done by my own hands, a door nobody could tell me to close or open. I did not come here to become someone's pity." "You are not mine." "No." "No," he looked at her then. "You are the woman who borrowed sugar she did not need and made my house feel less dead than it had in 9 years." The wagon rolled on. Miriam looked away, but not before he saw what the words had done. When they reached her gate, Elias unloaded the supplies without asking permission. She let him, though that may have been because she was too moved to scold him properly. He placed the coffee, nails, and flour inside her doorway. The sugar he left in the wagon. Miriam noticed, "You forgot your purchase." "I figured I would keep it at your house." "For what purpose?" He looked at her from the porch step, sunlight caught in the dust around him. "Emergencies." "What kind of emergency requires sugar in a house where no one uses it?" "The kind where a man needs a reason to come calling." Miriam went very still. Then she laughed, but it broke halfway into something tender. "You are learning dangerous habits, Elias Mercer." "I had a capable teacher." From inside the wagon, Blue barked once, as if approving the lesson. Elias left before he could say more than courage could carry. Behind him, Miriam stood on her porch with the sugar sack in her arms, watching until he reached the bend in the road. That evening, when Elias set his supper plate on the table, he did not pretend the room was unchanged. The second cup remained on the shelf. The blanket remained folded over the second chair. And in Miriam Vale's pantry, a sack of sugar sat waiting for a visit neither of them had yet named. The sugar Elias left in Miriam Vale's pantry became the most unnecessary, useful thing in her cabin. She saw it every morning when she reached for coffee. It sat on the second shelf in a brown paper sack, folded neatly at the top, waiting with the patience of a secret. She did not use it. She did not move it. She only looked at it, then looked away, as if a sack of sugar had no right to know so much about her heart. For 3 days after the town trip, Elias did not come calling. Miriam told herself she was relieved. Relief, she discovered, looked strangely like standing at the window while kneading biscuit dough she knew would come out hard. It looked like pausing whenever Blue barked across the distance. It looked like setting 2 cups on the table, then putting one back before loneliness could accuse her of anything. On the 4th morning, she was hauling water from the well when Elias rode up with Blue trotting beside his horse. Miriam kept her face calm. "Morning, Mr. Mercer." "Morning, Mrs. Vale." Blue ran to her first, tail wagging, tongue out, joy shameless. "At least one of you has manners," she said, rubbing his ears. "I was about to tip my hat." "You were slow." "I will work on it." Elias dismounted and lifted a small tin from his saddlebag. Miriam eyed it. "What is that?" "Coffee." "You have coffee." "I have poor coffee." "You drink whatever comes hot and black." That was before I learned Mr. Prout sells better coffee to widows. "He sells me the same coffee." "Then I came to borrow your judgment." Miriam folded her arms, trying hard not to smile. That sounds suspiciously like an excuse. "It is a respectable one." "Barely." "Barely still counts." She took the tin from him and turned toward the cabin. "Come in, then. We will see if my judgment can improve your character." I would not ask too much of it. Inside, the cabin still held the marks of a woman fighting to make a place answer to her name. Curtains, unevenly hemmed, hung at the window. A shelf Elias had helped brace now held jars of beans, coffee, dried apples, and the sugar sack he had left behind. A quilt lay folded over the foot of the narrow bed. A hammer, not his, sat on the table beside a cracked teacup full of bent nails. It was not graceful. It was alive. Elias noticed the sugar immediately. Miriam noticed him noticing. "Still there," she said. "I see that." "Untouched." "Good. I would hate to think my emergency supply was being wasted on ordinary use." She turned away to hide her smile and set the coffee to boil. "You have a strange idea of emergencies." "I have had stranger ideas lately." The words warmed the room more than the stove. They sat at her small table with 2 cups between them. Elias took his coffee black. Miriam took hers black as well. The sugar sat above them like a witness called to testify and then politely ignored. "This is better than mine," Elias admitted. "Your pride must be suffering. It has endured worse." "Has it?" He looked at her over the rim of his cup. "You have met Solomon." She laughed, and the cabin seemed to brighten. Outside, Ruth scratched beneath the porch step with the look of a hen planning future crimes. Solomon crowed from the fence rail, though noon was still hours away, and no one had requested his opinion. Miriam glanced out the window. "I have been meaning to mend the coop latch." "Before or after Ruth forms a gang?" "She already has." "I feared as much." "I suppose you came at a fortunate time." "You need help." Miriam's face changed at the word need. Elias saw it and quietly corrected himself. "You want an extra pair of hands." That softened her. "I would not refuse one." They spent the late morning repairing the coop latch and reinforcing the low corner where Ruth had apparently been teaching the others the art of escape. Miriam worked beside Elias with steady competence, holding boards in place, handing nails, correcting him when he misjudged the angle. "You are particular," he said. "I am right. Those are different things. Not as often as men think." He laughed and she looked satisfied. The coop was nearly finished when Blue lifted his head sharply. A thin, distant ball floated from beyond the wash. Elias turned toward the sound. That yours? Miriam straightened. One of the calves. You missing any? Not this morning. Another ball came, weaker this time. Miriam was already moving. They found the young calf half a mile beyond the lower pasture, where the creek bed cut deep between clay banks. It had slipped down into a narrow, muddy pocket and wedged itself behind a tangle of roots. Not hurt badly, Elias thought at first glance, but frightened enough to make rescue harder than it needed to be. Miriam crouched near the edge. That is Clover. You name all your animals. Only the ones with personalities. She looks stuck. She is stubborn. Another leader. A future one. The bank was slick from the old storm, the mud holding dampness in its belly long after the surface dried. Elias studied the slope. We will need rope. I have some in the shed. Too far, I have one on the saddle. He walked back for it, and Miriam stayed at the bank, speaking low to the calf in a voice so gentle Elias slowed before she noticed him. There now, girl. You picked a foolish place to prove yourself, didn't you? I understand the habit, but it does not make the mud any kinder. The words were meant for the calf. They found Elias anyway. When he returned with the rope, Miriam took one end and tied the loop with hands that shook only slightly. You have done this before? He asked. No. That knot will hold. I know. He did not smile. I believe you. The simple trust steadied her more than instruction would have. Elias climbed halfway down the bank first, boots sinking into mud, one hand gripping a root. Miriam followed against his advice, and before he could finish giving it. I said stay above. And I heard you. That is not the same as listening. I know. The calf bawled again. Together they worked the rope beneath Clover's chest, Miriam murmuring nonsense comfort while Elias braced himself against the bank. Mud climbed their boots and smeared their sleeves. Once, Miriam slipped, and Elias caught her by the waist before she could fall hard. For a second she was pressed against him, breath-sharp hand gripping his shoulder. Neither moved. The calf bawled directly beside them, offended by the pause. Miriam blinked first. Clover objects. So do I, Elias said, though his hand had not yet left her waist. To what? To mud. Her eyes searched his face, and the question between them was not about mud at all. Then she stepped back carefully, and he let her go. It took nearly an hour to free the calf. Elias pushed from below while Miriam pulled and guided from the side, both of them slipping, straining, and speaking in half-finished commands that somehow made sense. At last, Clover scrambled up the bank, shook mud from her legs, and trotted toward the pasture as if she had not caused any trouble whatsoever. Miriam sat down in the grass, muddy from elbow to boot. Elias climbed out after her, breathing hard. Future leader, he said. She has promise. She has poor judgment. So do some men. I walked into that. You did. For a moment they both sat there, laughing too tiredly to care how they looked. Miriam had mud on her cheek again. Elias did not ask this time. He only pulled his handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. She took it with a look that said she remembered the last time he had touched that cheek. Thank you, she said. You are welcome. She wiped at the mud and only made it worse. Elias watched, mouth twitching. What? She asked. You moved it. Where? Everywhere. Then stop enjoying yourself and help. He leaned closer, took the handkerchief, and gently cleaned the streak near her jaw. His fingers were careful, slower than necessary, and the summer grass around them seemed to still. Miriam's breath caught. You keep getting mud on your face, he said softly. You keep noticing. It is hard not to. Her eyes lowered, then lifted again. Elias. He waited. She looked toward the calf, now grazing as though rescue had been her own idea. I meant what I said that day, about wanting my own life. I know. I did not come here looking for a husband. I know that too. And if I ever marry again, it will not be because folks think I ought to, or because work is hard, or because a woman's name looks lonely on a deed. Elias folded the muddy handkerchief in his hands. That is as it should be. She searched his face carefully. You say that like you mean it. I do mean it. Most men say they admire a capable woman until she disagrees with them. I have been disagreed with by horses, weather, roosters, and now you. I am building endurance. That earned him a smile, but it did not erase the seriousness beneath it. I need to know something, Miriam said. He did not correct the word need. What? If I keep coming by, if we keep mending fences and rescuing foolish calves and borrowing things neither of us truly lacks, will you start thinking my land is only waiting to become yours? The question hit him square in the chest. Elias looked toward the two claims stretching on either side of the fence. His ranch, old with labor and sorrow. Her place, rough and stubborn and carrying the shape of her courage. No, he said. Miriam went very still. He turned back to her. Your land is yours, your work is yours, your choices are yours. If the day ever comes when you choose to share any of it, that will be because you choose it, not because I mistake kindness for ownership. Her eyes shone, though she did not cry. You sound very sure. I am sure. How? Because I know what it is to have a house become a grave for a life you lost. I would not turn yours into another kind of cage. Miriam looked away then, swallowing hard. The wind moved across the pasture, bending the grass around them. Blue lay nearby, watching both of them with quiet approval. Solomon crowed in the distance, ruining the tenderness just enough to keep it human. Miriam laughed under her breath. What? Elias asked. I was trying to have a serious moment, and my rooster interrupted it. He does not respect romance. Her cheeks colored. I did not say romance. No, Elias said, you did not. The word stayed there anyway. On the walk back to her cabin, they moved slower than the distance required. Clover, safely returned to the pasture, followed them partway and then lost interest. Blue carried a stick he had not been asked to fetch. Miriam's sleeve brushed Elias once, then again, and neither of them changed course. At the porch she paused. I should wash the mud off your handkerchief before returning it. You could keep it until you need another excuse. Her smile softened into something that made his chest ache. I seem to be running out of those. Are you? A little. Then I suppose we will have to invent better ones. She stepped up onto the porch and turned back to him. Coffee tomorrow. At my place or yours? That depends. On what? On whether you are borrowing my judgment again, or whether I am borrowing your company. Elias held her gaze. The second one, he said, whichever house it happens in. Miriam looked down, but her smile remained. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow. He rode home in the soft light of late afternoon, muddy, tired, and happier than a careful man had any business being. That evening, Miriam washed his handkerchief and hung it by the stove to dry. She made coffee and did not drink it right away. Instead, she stood beneath the pantry shelf and looked at the sugar sack. Then she reached up, took it down, and poured a little into a small blue jar. She still did not use sugar. But now she had something to carry. Across the pasture, Elias set 2 plates at his table by mistake. This time, he left them there until morning. By July, the road between Briar Creek Ranch and Miriam Vale's cabin had begun to look less like a road, and more like a promise being worn into the earth. Elias Mercer traveled it with excuses that grew thinner by the day. A question about fence wire, a concern about Ruth's escape habits, a need to return a basket Miriam had filled with cornbread, a sudden interest in whether her coffee truly was better than his. He knew what he was doing, though he pretended otherwise for the sake of old habits. Miriam pretended too. That was the courtesy they offered each other. She came to his place with a jar of sugar she did not use, a clean handkerchief she had already returned once, and on one memorable afternoon, a request to borrow his opinion on whether Solomon looked ill. Elias stood in her yard, staring at the rooster as it strutted in hateful circles near the shed. "He looks mean," Elias said. "He always looks mean. Then he appears healthy." Miriam frowned at the bird. He did not crow at dawn. Maybe he found mercy. "Elias, he chased me into my own wagon last week. You were laughing. I was fleeing. You were laughing while fleeing. A man may keep his spirits up in danger." Solomon crowed then, loud enough to make Blue bark and Ruth scatter under the porch. Miriam pressed a hand to her mouth, failing to hide her smile. "There, he is well. He waited for me. He likes an audience. He likes my suffering. Then you have given him purpose." Elias looked at her sideways. "You sent for me to examine a perfectly healthy rooster." "I was concerned." "No, you were not." Her cheeks warmed, perhaps mildly. "Miriam." She turned toward the cabin, but not quickly enough to hide the smile. "Would you like coffee while you are accusing me? I suppose I have already come this far." "Half a mile." "A dangerous journey. There was a rooster." They drank coffee on her porch while the afternoon leaned golden over the fields. Blue slept near Miriam's boots. Solomon, having performed his villainy for the day, took prideful command of the fence rail. Elias sat on the step below Miriam, elbows resting on his knees, hat beside him. The silence between them had changed over the weeks. At first, it had been a place to hide. Then it became a bridge. Now it felt like a room they both entered willingly. Miriam looked across the pasture toward the repaired fence line. "I used to think quiet meant I was winning." "Winning what?" "The argument everyone else started for me." Elias turned the coffee cup in his hands. "The one about needing nobody." "Yes," she breathed a small laugh. "Back in Illinois, everyone wanted to decide what my grief meant. My aunt thought it meant I should live with her and teach sewing to girls who hated needles. Aaron's brother thought it meant I should sell the little house and give him half because he had always said Aaron was poor with money. My mother wrote that a young widow with clear eyes would remarry before loneliness made her bitter." "Clear eyes?" That was her phrase. "She sounds practical." "She is." Miriam looked down at her cup. "That was what made it worse. Cruel words are easier to ignore when they come wearing cruelty. Practical ones sit down at the table and sound like sense." Elias knew that too. After Marin died, men had told him to work. Women had told him to pray. Old ranchers had told him time would harden the hurt into something he could carry. None of them had been entirely wrong. That was the trouble with advice. Sometimes it was true and still useless. "What did Aaron tell you?" he asked. Miriam's face softened around the name. "He told me I had a mind like flint, and a heart I protected like stolen gold." Elias smiled faintly. "Sounds like he knew you." "He did," she swallowed. "He also told me near the end not to let people turn my life into a memorial for his." The wind moved gently through the grass. Elias said nothing. Some words deserved space around them. Miriam continued, quieter now. "I thought coming west alone would prove I had listened. I would build a cabin, work a claim, keep my own name, and show everyone I had not become a shadow tied to a grave." "You have done that." "Have I?" "Yes." She looked at him. Elias held her gaze with all the steadiness he had. "This place has your hands on it, your stubbornness too, which is less charming in fence work than in conversation." She laughed despite herself. "You can stand alone, Miriam. I have never doubted that." Her smile faded into something more fragile. "Then why does it feel like failing to want you nearby?" The question left her before she had prepared for it. Elias felt it strike him in the chest, clean and true. Miriam looked away quickly. "I should not have said that." "I am glad you did." You should not be. I am. Elias. I want you nearby too. She went still. The porch boards creaked softly as he shifted, turning toward her. He did not reach for her, not yet. Miriam's independence was not a wall to break. It was a door she had every right to open herself. I spent 9 years making a virtue out of emptiness, he said. Called it peace, called it safety, called it anything but fear. Then you came asking for coffee, flour, nails, sugar, and mercy help me, judgment on a rooster. Now my own house feels strange when your voice is not in it. Her eyes glistened. That is a dangerous thing to say, she whispered. I know. Dangerous things are not always wrong. No. For one long moment, the afternoon seemed to hold its breath around them. Then Ruth came tearing around the side of the cabin with a strip of cloth in her beak, chased by 3 hens and Solomon, who seemed offended to be outrun by chaos he had not personally organized. Miriam jumped up. That is my dish towel. Elias stood too. Ruth has escalated. She is not a criminal. She is carrying evidence. They ran after the hen, laughing hard enough that Blue woke and joined the chase without understanding the charge. Ruth darted beneath the wagon, through a gap in the woodpile, around the water trough and straight into Elias' boots. He bent, caught the cloth, lost his balance, and sat down in the dust with a startled grunt. Miriam stopped with both hands over her mouth. Do not, he warned. She laughed anyway, bright and helpless. Blue barked, Solomon crowed. Ruth escaped without remorse. Elias looked up at Miriam from the dirt, holding the stolen towel like a defeated flag. Your livestock is poorly raised. My livestock is spirited. Your livestock belongs in jail. Then you should not have surrendered so easily. He reached up, help me. She took his hand. He rose too quickly, and for a breath they stood close. Close enough that her laughter faded. Close enough that dust on his sleeve brushed the front of her dress. Close enough that the world narrowed again, not like a storm this time, but like sunset entering one window. Miriam did not step away. Elias lifted his free hand slowly, giving her time to refuse, and touched the loose strand of hair near her cheek. You are dusty, he said. So are you. I blame Ruth. I blame you for losing to her. I retrieved the towel. You fell. Heroically. Her lips curved. He wanted to kiss her. The wanting came not as a wild thing, but as something quiet and certain, like a lamp being lit in a house long after dark. He could have leaned forward. She might have let him. But in her eyes he saw not fear exactly, but the weight of all the rooms she had fought to keep her own. So he let his hand fall. Miriam noticed that restraint. Her expression softened in a way that made the restraint harder and more worthwhile. Coffee tomorrow, she asked. At my place. If your coffee has improved. It has not. Then I will bring mine. And what excuse will you use? Miriam looked toward the pantry window where the sugar sack sat on its shelf. Maybe none. The next morning, she came without a jar. Elias saw her from the barn and stopped with the curry brush in his hand. Blue bolted past him, all joy and no shame. Miriam walked up the road carrying a small covered basket, her hair pinned neatly, her expression carrying the brave discomfort of a woman arriving with no practical reason at all. Elias met her at the gate. No empty hands today, he asked. She lifted the basket, cornbread. That is an excuse. Barely. Barely still counts, I have heard. She smiled. I thought we had agreed to invent better ones. They ate at his table at noon. 2 plates, 2 cups, cornbread warm enough to soften butter. Elias had cooked beans, and Miriam declared them respectable after adding salt he had not thought they needed. You season like a man who believes food is punishment, she said. I survive. That is not the same as eating. You have opinions about everything. Yes. I am learning. She looked pleased. Slowly, but yes. After the meal, Elias showed her the small garden Maren had once kept behind the house. He had let it go after her death, not entirely from grief, though grief had done its share. A man alone did not need marigolds near the back step or mint by the basin window. He had told himself useful plants mattered more: beans, potatoes, onions, things that kept a body through winter. But the mint still grew wild near the stone path, stubborn as memory. Miriam knelt beside it and rubbed a leaf between her fingers. It came back. Every year. And you let it. I did not have the heart to pull it. She looked at him over her shoulder. That is not weakness. I did not say it was. You thought it. Elias leaned against the fence. You are too good at hearing what a man does not say. It comes from living among people who said what they did not mean. He looked down at the mint. Maren planted it the first spring we came west, said a house needed something sweet at the door even if the people inside were tired. Miriam's fingers stilled on the leaves. She sounds wise. She was young. You can be both. Elias nodded, accepting the correction. Miriam stood slowly. Do you mind speaking of her? Some days. And today. He looked at the garden, the wild mint, the woman standing where sunlight caught the edge of her sleeve. Today it feels less like opening a wound and more like opening a window. Her eyes softened. I would have liked her, Miriam said. I think she would have liked you. Even though I borrow sugar I do not use. She would have seen through you sooner. Miriam smiled. That sounds inconvenient. She was fond of inconvenient truths. They worked the garden until evening, clearing weeds from the stone path, trimming the mint back, and planting late beans, though Elias said the season was against them. Hope does not always consult the calendar, Miriam said. No, I suppose it does not. As they worked, Elias found himself telling small stories he had not spoken aloud in years. How Maren sang off-key while kneading bread. How she insisted curtains made a house kinder. How she once tried to teach Blue as a pup to stay off the bed and lost within a week. Miriam listened, without flinching from the name of the dead. That mattered more than comfort. Near sunset, she sat on the back step and washed dirt from her hands in a basin. Elias stood nearby, watching the sky burn pink over the hills. You loved her well, Miriam said. I did. And that does not make this wrong. He looked at her. Miriam did not look away. I tell myself the same about Aaron. Some mornings I believe it. Some mornings I think wanting to laugh again is a kind of betrayal. It is not. I know, her mouth trembled. Knowing and feeling are not always neighbors. Elias sat beside her, leaving a careful space between them. No, he said, but they can learn the road. For a while they watched the evening settle over Briar Creek. Blue slept in the yard. Horses moved slowly near the corral. The second chair inside the kitchen waited without looking abandoned. Miriam's hand rested on the porch step between them. Elias placed his hand beside hers, not touching. A minute passed. Then Miriam moved her smallest finger until it rested lightly against his. It was hardly anything. It was enough. If this quiet porch moment touched your heart, leave a like for these two stubborn neighbors. Some love stories are not built from grand speeches, but from coffee poured twice, a garden weeded together, and one hand brave enough to move an inch. The next week changed, because the town began to notice what the road already knew. At first, it came in harmless shapes. Mr. Prout asking Elias whether he needed his usual sugar with a twinkle too obvious to be accidental. Mrs. Bell smiling too long when Miriam bought coffee. The blacksmith calling after Elias that Briar Creek seemed to be getting more visitors than church lately. Elias ignored most of it. Miriam heard all of it. She tried not to let it matter. She had meant what she said. She did not want to live by what other people noticed. But gossip in a small town did not knock politely and leave when asked. It slipped under doors. It sat beside women at counters. It turned ordinary kindness into a question of character. On Friday, Miriam rode into Pine Hollow alone. She needed kerosene, thread, and feed for the hens. She did not need sugar. She promised herself she would not even look at it. The mercantile bell rang above her as she entered. Mr. Prout was helping a ranch hand near the counter. Mrs. Bell stood by the ribbon shelf with Mrs. Haskett, the baker's cousin, both of them turning as Miriam came in. Their smiles were polite. Too polite. Miriam gathered her supplies calmly. She measured out coffee, chose thread, asked for kerosene. Her hands did not shake until she reached for the feed sack and heard Mrs. Haskett's voice drop behind her. "Every week now seems like..." Mrs. Bell murmured, something Miriam could not make out. Then Mrs. Haskett spoke again, just loud enough for a careless room. "I suppose a widow can call it borrowing if she likes. Looks more like proving she cannot manage alone." Miriam went still. The words did not sound cruel enough to defend against. That was the worst of it. They sounded practical, familiar, almost the same shape as voices from Illinois, voices that had followed her west no matter how many miles she put beneath wagon wheels. Cannot manage alone. She held the feed sack so tightly, the paper creased beneath her fingers. Mr. Prout noticed and cleared his throat. "Anything else, Mrs. Vale?" "No," she said. Her voice was steady. Her heart was not. She paid, carried her goods to the wagon, and drove home with her back straight enough to ache. That evening, Elias set out 2 cups before he knew he was doing it. The road stayed empty. Blue waited at the gate until dark. "She has work," Elias told him. The dog did not move. "She is likely tired." Blue whined softly. Elias looked toward Miriam's claim, where one lamp burned in the cabin window, small and far away. Inside that cabin, Miriam sat at her table with her hands folded around a cup of black coffee gone cold. The sugar jar stood on the shelf. The handkerchief Elias had lent her lay clean and folded beside the stove. The cabin she had fought to make her own suddenly felt like a witness against her. "I can manage," she whispered to the room. The room gave no answer. She rose, took the sugar jar from the shelf, and held it a long moment. Then she put it in the pantry, behind the flour where she would not have to see it. Across the pasture, Elias waited until the lamp in her window went out. For the first time since she had walked to his door with an empty cup, he did not know whether the silence between their houses was peaceful, frightened, or beginning to break. Miriam Vale stopped taking the road to Briar Creek Ranch. At first, she told herself it was only for a day. A woman had chores. A woman had a claim to prove. A woman could not spend every evening sitting on a widower's porch while the county counted the hours and turned them into judgment. So on Saturday, she stayed home. She mended the hem of her brown dress. She washed the coffee cups. She cleaned the stove until it looked better than it had any right to look. She patched the chicken coop where Ruth had loosened a board, and when Solomon strutted too near her boot as if offering criticism, she pointed at him with the hammer. "Do not start with me today." Solomon crowed. "I mean it." The rooster pecked at the dust, unconcerned. Miriam spent the afternoon pulling weeds from the garden, though half of what she pulled was not weeds at all. Her hands worked hard. Her thoughts worked harder. Every sound from the road made her lift her head before she could stop herself. But Elias did not come. That should have made things easier. It did not. By Sunday morning, she had rearranged every shelf in the pantry except the one that mattered. The little blue sugar jar remained tucked behind the flour where she had hidden it after the mercantile. She knew exactly where it was. That seemed worse than leaving it in plain sight. After church, Mrs. Bell smiled at her from across the yard with too much sympathy. Mr. Prout tipped his hat and asked whether she had all she needed for the week. A harmless question, a merchant's question, but Miriam heard the hidden shape of it. All she needed. She went home without speaking more than necessary. By Monday, the cabin felt smaller. Not because anything had changed, The curtains still hung unevenly. The coffee still sat in its tin. Aaron's small Bible still rested on the trunk at the foot of the bed, the ribbon marking a psalm he had loved. Her land still stretched outside the door with the same dry grass, crooked shed, and stubborn hens. But silence had become a thing with memory. It remembered Elias laughing at Ruth. It remembered Blue sleeping with his head on her boot. It remembered coffee poured black into 2 cups and a man telling her that her land would never become his unless she chose to share it. That last memory was the most dangerous because it did not weaken her. It made her feel seen. And somehow that frightened her more than being dismissed ever had. Across the pasture, Elias Mercer noticed her absence before the first day ended. By the second, he had invented 3 reasons not to ride over. The coop latch was fixed. The fence line was sound. She had coffee. She had sugar, though neither of them used it. She had not sent for him. A man ought to respect quiet when a woman chose it. By the 3rd evening, Blue lay at the gate and refused supper. "You are making a fool of yourself," Elias told him. Blue did not look back. She has her own life. The dog gave a low whine. "I know that." Blue's ears twitched. "I said I know." Elias stood on the porch with a cup of coffee cooling in his hand. The sun had gone down behind the hills, leaving the road gray and empty. At Miriam's cabin, one lamp glowed in the window. He could see it from where he stood if he looked through the gap in the cottonwoods. He looked too often. Inside his kitchen, the second cup sat on the shelf beside his own. The blanket remained over the back of the chair. Her basket, the one she had brought with cornbread, sat washed and ready near the door. He had meant to return it. Then he had not. Now it had become another excuse too obvious to use. He set his cup down untouched. "Some men learn slow," he said. Blue lifted his head. "I did not say we were going." The dog stood. Elias sighed. "You understand too much English when it suits you." He took the basket, then set it back down. No, returning a basket was the same old cowardice in a new hat. Miriam had shown him the cost of excuses. He would not insult her with one now. So he did nothing. That was worse. On Tuesday morning, Elias rode to the north pasture and worked cattle until sweat darkened his shirt and dust clung to his throat. He fixed a broken gate. He tightened a loose cinch. He hauled feed. He did every task a ranch could offer, and still found himself hearing Miriam's voice in places it had no business being. You season like a man who believes food is punishment. Even poultry can have dreams. Knowing and feeling are not always neighbors. He stopped near the creek in late afternoon and dismounted to let his horse drink. The repaired boundary fence stood not far away, straight and solid beneath the light. He rested one hand on the top rail. When they had fixed it, he had believed they were setting something right. Now it looked like the thing between them had become straight enough to hold distance properly. Blue sniffed at the rail, then looked toward Miriam's claim. "No," Elias said. The dog ignored him and slipped through the lower gap. "Blue." The dog kept going. Elias watched him trot across the open stretch toward Miriam's cabin, tail low but determined. He could have whistled. Blue would have come back, maybe. But Elias only stood there, hand on the rail, and let the old dog do what he himself had not found the courage to do. Miriam was washing clothes behind the cabin when Blue arrived. He came around the shed with burrs in his fur and dust on his nose, looking very much like a messenger who had forgotten the message, but trusted his face would explain enough. Miriam's heart squeezed. "No," she said softly, "you cannot do this." Blue wagged once. "You belong home." He said, "Your home, not mine." He placed his chin on her muddy boot. Miriam closed her eyes. For one weak moment she let her hand settle on his head. His fur was warm from the sun. He smelled of grass, dust, and Elias' yard. The ache of it was almost foolish. "I miss him too," she whispered. Blue looked up. The words hung in the air, plain and terrible. Miriam pulled her hand back, as though the dog might repeat them. She finished the washing with Blue lying nearby, then walked him to the fence before sunset. Elias was still there, or perhaps had returned. He stood on his own side, hat low, one hand resting on the rail. For a moment, neither spoke. The fence ran between them, not broken now, not sagging, not easy to blame. Miriam stopped 3 steps from it. Blue squeezed through and went to Elias, but then turned back as if disappointed that humans still required training. "Your dog wandered," she said. "He has been doing that lately. You should mend the gap." "I thought about it." "Why haven't you?" Elias looked at the lower space where Blue had passed through. Seems the only part of the fence with sense. Her mouth almost softened. "Almost." She folded her hands before her. "I have been busy. I reckoned with the claim. I reckoned that too. And church. On a Tuesday." That nearly pulled a smile from her, but she held it back with visible effort. "Elias." He looked at her then fully. The sound of his name in her voice hurt more than formality would have. "I heard something in town," she said. His expression changed. "Who said what?" "That does not matter. It matters if it hurt you. It matters because I let it." She lifted her chin, but her eyes were tired. "They said I was proving I could not manage alone." Elias' jaw tightened. Miriam saw anger rise in him and shook her head before it could become action. "No, do not ride into town with that look." "I was not planning to." "You were." "I was considering." "Do not." He held her gaze across the fence. "Why are their words allowed to stand between us?" "Because they are not only their words." Her voice lowered. "They are every warning I rode away from. Every person who said this claim was too much. Every relative who looked at me and saw a woman-shaped problem waiting for a man-shaped answer." "You are not that." "I know." "Do you?" "I know it here." She pressed a hand to her chest. "But knowing a thing does not keep it from bruising." Elias looked down at the rail between them. Miriam went on before courage failed. "When I come to your house, I am happy. That is the trouble. I am happy there. I like your kitchen. I like your terrible coffee. I like that Blue meets me before you do. I like the chair by the stove and the mint by the back step, and the way you pretend not to watch the road." Her voice trembled now but did not break. "And then I come home and ask myself whether I have built a life, or only found a softer place to disappear into." Elias took that in slowly, with the care of a man holding something breakable. "You do not disappear around me," he said. "No. No, Miriam, when you are in my house, it is the house that wakes up, not you that fades." Her eyes filled despite all her effort. "That is a kind thing to say." "It is a true thing." "That makes it harder." He placed both hands on the rail. "Tell me what you want me to do." She looked at him for a long while. The honest answer rose inside her, wild and simple. "Come over. Stay. Tell me the county is small and foolish, and we are not. Ask me to stop pretending." But beneath that answer was another one, older and more frightened. "Let me prove I can stand without leaning." "I need time," she said. Elias flinched only slightly, but she saw it. "All right," he said. The quiet after those 2 words felt like a door closing gently instead of slamming. Somehow that hurt more. "I am not angry," she said. "I know. And I am not saying there is nothing here." His eyes lifted. She swallowed. "There is, that is why I need time." Elias nodded once. "Then I will give it." Blue whined. Miriam smiled sadly at the dog. "You disagree." "He often does. He has poor manners. He learned from me." That touched the corner of her mouth, just a little. Elias stepped back from the fence. "Good night, Miriam." "Good night, Elias." He walked away first because she looked too tired to do it. Blue followed after several reluctant glances over his shoulder. Miriam stayed at the fence until he reached his barn. Then she went inside and shut the door. The next week passed like a long winter, arriving in summer clothes. Miriam worked hard enough to exhaust herself. She rose before dawn and repaired the shed roof. She hauled water. She weeded the garden. She took the wagon to town and spoke to everyone with a calm face. At the mercantile, she bought flour, coffee, and thread. When Mr. Prout asked whether she needed sugar, she said no so evenly that even Mrs. Haskett looked down at her ribbon. At home, she made herself sit on her own porch every evening. She would not look toward Briar Creek. Then she would look anyway. Elias honored her request. That was the worst part. He did not ride over. He did not send Blue, though Blue tried. He did not appear at her gate with a basket or a borrowed tool or some badly dressed excuse. The respect of it made Miriam feel both grateful and abandoned, which she knew was unfair and felt anyway. Elias suffered his own discipline in silence. He cleared the second plate from the table and put it back in the cupboard. Then the next morning he found it on the table again because he had set it there before remembering. He stopped buying sugar, then checked the tin 3 times to make sure it was still full. He avoided looking toward her cabin during daylight and failed at dusk. The house, once comfortably quiet, had turned against him. Every room accused him of having learned happiness and then misplaced it. The kitchen sounded empty, the porch looked empty. The second chair was not simply unused now, it was waiting. On Friday night, a dry wind moved over the ranch, rattling the shutters. Elias sat at the table with coffee he did not want and beans he had salted badly. Blue lay by the stove with his head on his paws, facing the door. She asked for time, Elias said. Blue sighed. I am giving it. The dog did not move. I am. The wind struck the house again, and the sugar tin on the shelf gave a small metallic tremble. Elias looked at it. He thought of Miriam hiding the blue jar in her pantry, though he did not know she had done it. He thought of her standing at the fence, saying happiness frightened her because it felt like disappearing. He thought of Marin's mint by the back step, and Aaron's words Miriam carried like a lantern, not to let life become a memorial. Somewhere between the coffee cooling and the wind rising, Elias understood something that made him sit very still. He had been waiting for Miriam to decide whether she needed him. But that was not the question. The question was whether he had the courage to admit he needed her. Not for cooking, not for mending, not for softening the house, not because grief had made him hollow and she could fill the empty place. He needed her because love had found him again, not as thunder, not as fire, but as a woman with muddy hands, sharp wit, black coffee, and a sugar jar she never used. And if he hid that truth behind respect forever, he would be no better than a man borrowing excuses from his own fear. He stood so suddenly Blue lifted his head. No, Elias said, as if answering an argument the dog had not made. Not tonight. Blue lowered his head again, unimpressed. Elias walked to the pantry and took down the sugar tin. It was nearly full. Of course it was. He opened it, stared at the white sweetness inside, and let out a quiet laugh that held no humor at all. I do not use sugar, he said. The words changed in his mouth. They were no longer Miriam's confession. They were his. The next morning, Miriam woke before sunrise to a world washed pale with early light. She dressed, tied her hair back, and opened the cabin door to begin another day of proving she could manage. On the porch sat the small blue sugar jar. For a moment, she thought she had forgotten bringing it out. Then she saw the folded paper tucked beneath it. Her hand shook as she picked it up. The note held only one line, written in Elias Mercer's plain, careful hand. I borrowed your excuse, but I am returning it until I learn to ask properly. Miriam sank slowly onto the porch step. The sugar jar sat beside her in the morning quiet. Across the pasture, Briar Creek Ranch waited beneath the same dawn. For the first time in days, Miriam did not feel judged by the distance between them. She felt called by it. Miriam Vale, read Elias Mercer's note until the words blurred. I borrowed your excuse, but I am returning it until I learn to ask properly. The morning stayed still around her. A thin silver light rested on the porch boards. The hens scratched near the shed. Somewhere beyond the fence, Solomon crowed as if announcing judgment upon the entire valley. But Miriam heard only the quiet truth folded inside that single line. Elias had not come to demand. He had not come to rescue. He had not come with anger in his hands or wounded pride in his mouth. He had come to return an excuse. That was worse than a speech. Better too. A speech could be argued with. A note could be folded and placed in a drawer. But the blue sugar jar on her porch sat there like a small, stubborn heart, refusing to let her pretend she did not understand. Miriam picked it up and held it against her skirt. The jar was cool from the morning air. Inside, the sugar shifted softly. She had hidden it behind the flour because she had not wanted to look at what it meant. Now Elias had carried it back into the light. She laughed once, but it broke before it became sound. You difficult man, she whispered. Ruth, standing near the porch step, tilted her head as if deeply offended that the conversation did not include her. Miriam wiped her cheek quickly. Not you, though the words apply. She carried the jar inside and set it on the table. Not in the pantry. Not behind the flour. On the table. Then she made coffee and drank it black, staring at the sugar she still had no intention of using. All morning she worked with the note tucked in her apron pocket. She fed the hens, hauled water, scrubbed mud from the doorstep, checked the coop latch twice. Every ordinary task seemed to ask the same question. What would asking properly sound like? She had spent years answering other people's questions before they could trap her. No, she did not need a husband. No, she would not sell her claim. No, she was not lonely enough to return home. No, grief had not made her foolish. No, wanting land did not make her hard. No, being alone did not frighten her. Only some of those answers had been true. By noon, the sun warmed the cabin, and Miriam sat at the small table with Aaron's Bible open before her, though she had not read a word. The ribbon still marked the psalm he had loved. She touched the worn edge of the page and thought of his voice. Do not let them make your life a memorial for mine. She had obeyed him in one way. She had left Illinois. She had taken land in her own name. She had built a cabin, mended fences, chased hens, hauled water, and learned the shape of hardship by its first name. But another part of her life had remained a memorial all the same. A memorial made of refusal. No to help. No to tenderness. No to wanting anything that might prove the world could still take something from her. The truth was plain enough now that she almost resented it. Elias Mercer had not made her weak. He had made her honest. And honesty, she was discovering, took more courage than pride ever had. That afternoon, Miriam hitched her mare to the wagon with no list in her pocket and no excuse prepared. The sugar jar sat beside her on the bench, wrapped in a cloth so it would not break over the ruts. Blue did not meet her at the halfway fence. That made sense. The dog was likely with Elias. Still, the absence made the road feel longer. She reached Briar Creek near sunset. Elias was in the corral, working with a young sorrel that had more nerves than sense. Blue lay in the shade, watching him with the bored wisdom of age. When Miriam's wagon turned through the gate, Blue sprang up and ran toward her with a bark that sounded like accusation and welcome both. Elias looked over. For a moment, he did not move. The sorrel tossed its head, insulted by the sudden lack of attention. Miriam stepped down from the wagon with the wrapped jar in her hands. Elias came to the fence slowly, as if too quick a movement might frighten the truth back into hiding. Mrs. Vale, he said. Mr. Mercer. Blue pressed against her skirt, determined to restore all broken arrangements immediately. Miriam scratched his head, but her eyes stayed on Elias. Your note was unfair. His face tightened. Was it? Yes, it made me think before breakfast. A faint smile touched his mouth. My apologies. No, you are not sorry. No, he admitted, not much. She looked toward the house, then back at him. Are you busy? I was pretending to be. With the horse? With everything? That sounds familiar. It has worked poorly. For me too. The honesty settled between them without ceremony. Elias opened the corral gate and stepped out. He did not come too close. That restraint again. Miriam used to think distance meant coldness. With Elias, it had become something else. Respect, patience. A man holding his hands open so she could see he had not come to take anything. She unwrapped the blue jar. His eyes lowered to it, then lifted to hers. You returned it, he said. You returned it first. I thought it belonged with you. I thought it belonged hidden in my pantry. She drew a breath. We were both wrong. Elias waited. Miriam held the jar out. It belongs wherever one of us is too proud to say the real thing. He took it carefully, his fingers brushing hers around the glass. And what is the real thing today? He asked. Her courage wavered. She felt it like a horse shying beneath a saddle. The old answers rose in her. Stand straight, say little, leave first. Let no one see what they can use against you. But Elias was not the county. He was not Illinois. He was not Aaron's family or her mother's practical letters. He was the man who had looked at her land and called it hers. The man who had covered her hand during a storm without asking for more than comfort. The man who knew grief by name and still found a way to make Ruth sound like an outlaw worth discussing. Miriam lifted her chin. I missed you, she said. The words came out plain, almost simple. Elias' face changed, as if the sun had moved from behind a cloud. I missed you too, he said. She looked down, swallowing hard. He stepped closer then, slowly. Is that all? No. The answer surprised them both. Miriam gave a small, breathless laugh. Apparently I am not finished. I have time. Do you? For this, yes. Blue sat between them, tail brushing the dust. The young sorrel snorted behind the fence. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark called from the grass. The world had become terribly ordinary for a moment that felt anything but. Miriam held her hands together before her. When Mrs. Haskett said I was proving I could not manage alone, it hurt because some foolish part of me still believes needing someone means surrendering myself. Elias' eyes stayed steady on hers. I know you have not asked that of me, she continued. That is what confuses me. You have not taken from me. You have not pushed. You have not made my choices feel smaller. But I am still frightened that if I let myself love what is growing here, people will look at me and say they were right all along. Elias' voice was low. Would they be? No, she said it quickly, then again with more strength. No, because they were not saying I might choose love freely. They were saying I would fail until a man fixed me. You are not broken. I know, her eyes filled. But I am tired, Elias. I am tired of proving it to people who never intended to believe me. The words seemed to leave her whole body lighter and weaker at once. Elias took one step closer, then stopped proving it to them. And do what? Live. The word came soft, but it struck deep. Miriam let out a breath that trembled. You make it sound simple. It is not. His mouth curved with a sadness she understood. I spent 9 years calling a locked door a peaceful house. And now I know it was only locked. She looked toward the kitchen window. The last light of evening rested against the glass. Inside that house were 2 cups on a shelf and a chair she had sat in during a storm. A kitchen that had once felt like grief and now felt dangerously close to welcome. What did you mean in the note? She asked. About learning to ask properly. Elias looked down at the sugar jar in his hand. I meant I have been waiting on excuses too. He rubbed his thumb along the lid. Waiting for you to borrow something. Waiting for Blue to cross the fence. Waiting for weather or work or some broken board to make honesty seem practical. He lifted his eyes. I do not want to wait on excuses anymore. Miriam's heart beat hard. What do you want? The question hung there between them. Not a proposal, not yet, something before that, something that had to come clean or not come at all. Elias set the sugar jar on the fence post beside them. "I want to court you," he said. Miriam went very still. He did not rush to fill the silence. His hands remained at his sides. His gaze remained steady but not demanding. "I do not mean ride roughshod over your claim," he continued. "I do not mean have the town decide what we are before you do. I do not mean make your life smaller so mine feels full. I mean I would like the right to come calling without pretending I need sugar, coffee, rope, or advice on a rooster who hates me." Despite the tears in her eyes, Miriam laughed. "Solomon does hate you. He has made his position known. You want to court me properly?" "Yes. With no excuses. With fewer excuses. I cannot promise none. A man needs something to do with his hands when he is nervous." That made her smile tremble. "And if I say I am still afraid," she asked, "then I will court you carefully. If I say people will talk, then I will tip my hat and give them something honest to talk about. If I say I need my land to remain mine, I will say it never stopped being yours." Miriam looked at him for a long moment. She had imagined love as something that arrived to claim, to rearrange, to name itself owner. But this stood before her hat in hand, asking permission to knock without lies. Her voice softened. "Then yes." Elias' breath left him slowly, as if he had been braced against a storm. "Yes. Yes, you may court me," she glanced toward the sugar jar, "but I reserve the right to borrow things when I miss you. I would expect nothing less. And you may borrow things from me. I will do so poorly and often." "Good." Blue barked once, startling them both, then wagged as though declaring the matter settled. Elias looked down at him. "You have been waiting to approve." He believes he arranged it. He may not be wrong. They walked to the porch together. Not hand in hand, not yet, but close enough that their sleeves brushed with each step. Elias made coffee while Miriam set the table without asking. 2 cups, 2 plates, beans, cornbread, and a small dish of dried apples he had been saving for no reason he could name until she smiled at them. "You kept these?" she asked. "Forgot I had them." "You are a poor liar." "I am out of practice." "You are not." He laughed, and the house received the sound like rain after drought. They ate with the door open to the cooling evening. Blue slept near the threshold, blocking half the entrance. The sugar jar sat in the middle of the table between them, absurd and solemn, like a guest of honor. Miriam touched the jar lightly. "This is a foolish centerpiece." "It is an honest one." "Yes," she said, "I suppose it is." After supper they sat on the porch. The sky had turned purple over the hills. Crickets began their thin music in the grass. Miriam leaned back against the post, her shoulder almost touching Elias' S. "Courtship," she said. "You sound doubtful." "I am considering the rules." "There are rules." "There should be, otherwise men become confused." "Men are confused with or without rules." "True." He smiled into the dark. Miriam counted on her fingers. "First, no deciding things for me." "Agreed." "Second, no pretending my chickens are criminals." "I cannot agree to falsehood." "Fine, no insulting Ruth in front of her followers." "I will try." "Third, if town talks, we do not let their voices become louder than ours." Elias turned toward her. That one had wait. He nodded, agreed. "And fourth," she said, softer now, "if either of us is afraid, we say so before we run." Elias looked at the road, then at the woman beside him. Agreed. For a while they sat with that promise. Then Miriam's hand moved across the porch board and rested between them, palm down. Elias looked at it. She did not look at him, but her little finger shifted just slightly, as it had once before beside Marin's mint. He placed his hand near hers. This time, Miriam turned her palm up. Elias took it. Their fingers laced slowly, awkwardly, carefully. No grand speech followed. No thunder. No sudden music from the heavens. Only Blue sighing in his sleep and the night settling around two people who had finally stopped mistaking loneliness for strength. Miriam looked at their joined hands. "I'm still afraid," she said. "So am I." She nodded. Good. Good. I would hate to be the only sensible one. Elias laughed softly. When he drove her home later, the moon had risen above the ridge. At her porch, he helped her down from the wagon and handed her the blue sugar jar. She raised a brow. "You are returning this again." "For now." "Why?" "So you have an excuse to come tomorrow if courage fails." Miriam took the jar and smiled. Then, before she could think long enough to stop herself, she stepped forward and kissed his cheek. It was brief, warm, a touch more honest than sugar and less frightening than the words still waiting down the road. Elias stood very still. Miriam stepped back, cheeks bright even in the moonlight. "Good night, Elias." His hand rose to where her lips had touched. "Good night, Miriam." She went inside with the jar held close. Elias rode home under the moon with Blue beside him, feeling younger, older, wounded, healed, and entirely unprepared. At Briar Creek, he entered his kitchen and looked at the empty space where the sugar jar had sat on the table. For once, the emptiness did not frighten him. It promised she would come back. Courtship, Miriam Vale decided, was a difficult thing to manage with dignity when a man kept arriving with ridiculous reasons to call. On Monday, Elias Mercer came to borrow a spoon. Not a special spoon, not a measuring spoon, not even a sturdy spoon fit for camp beans or medicine. Just one plain spoon, though Miriam could see from her porch that he had ridden half a mile with one already tucked in his shirt pocket. She stood in the doorway, arms folded. "You brought a spoon." Elias looked down as if surprised to discover it there. "So I did." "Then why are you borrowing mine?" "Mine is lonely." "That is your defense." It seemed strong when I left the house. Blue sat beside him with the solemn expression of a dog, ashamed of the quality of human courtship. Miriam tried not to smile. "You are very poor at this." "At borrowing." "At pretending." "I believe that was the point of our agreement. That we stop pretending. That we pretend less." "You are still pretending you need a spoon." "I said less, not never." She stepped aside. "Come in before your spoon embarrasses us both." On Wednesday, he came to return the spoon and borrow a cup. On Friday, he came to return the cup and borrow a book, though Miriam had only 3, and 2 of them were Aaron's old school readers. Elias chose a reader meant for children and declared it looked demanding. "You can read, Mr. Mercer," Miriam said. "Yes, but can I improve? That is the question." "You intend to read that?" "I intend to hold it with serious purpose. And then possibly ask you what the larger words mean." "There are no large words. It is for 8-year-olds." "Then I expect to do well." Miriam laughed so hard Ruth startled and dropped the string she had stolen from the sewing basket. The days began to gather warmth around them. Elias came calling openly now. Not every day, and not as if he had any claim upon her time, but with a steadiness that made Miriam feel both shy and safe. Sometimes he helped with the stock. Sometimes she rode to Briar Creek and worked beside him in Marin's wild garden, where the mint grew stronger after pruning, and late beans pushed small green leaves through the soil against all sensible advice. Sometimes they did nothing worth naming. Those were the visits that frightened Miriam most. It was easy to explain mending, hauling, searching, planting. It was harder to explain sitting on the porch at dusk while Elias described the habits of each horse in his corral, or while Miriam told him how Aaron had once tried to teach Latin to farm boys who preferred frogs. It was harder still to explain silence that did not ask to be filled. One evening, she brought supper to Briar Creek in a covered basket. Elias opened the cloth and looked inside. Biscuits. Do not sound so fearful. You told me you burned them. I said I had no patience for baking that calls for more than a spoonful of sugar. These look respectable. They are. You did not make them. Miriam narrowed her eyes. I did. He picked one up carefully. I was only preparing myself. Eat it. He took a bite. She waited. His brows rose. That is a biscuit. You sound astonished. I am wisely impressed. You expected a weapon. I expected endurance. She took the biscuit from his hand, broke it open, and showed him the soft middle. There, proof. I never doubted you. You doubted the biscuit. That is not the same. She smiled, but her fingers were still touching his where the biscuit rested between them. Neither moved. The lamp on the table warmed the kitchen walls. Blue lay near the stove between the two chairs, looking entirely satisfied with the arrangement. Elias' thumb brushed the side of her hand. Miriam looked down. Such a small thing, she thought. Such a dangerous little kindness. Then she let the biscuit go and sat across from him, before courage mistook itself for recklessness. They ate slowly, talking of ordinary things. That was the shape their affection had taken. Ordinary things made careful and bright by being shared. Beans tasted less like survival. Coffee became less bitter. Even dishes seemed less like chores when one washed and the other dried. After supper, Miriam carried the plates to the basin. Elias stood beside her with a towel. Leave those, I can do it. I am capable of washing 2 plates. I know. She looked at him half amused. Then why say it? He took 1 plate gently from her hand. Because knowing you can does not mean I cannot stand beside you. The words moved through her softly. She looked at the basin, the 2 plates, the lamplight on his hands. That is a good answer. I have them sometimes. Rarely. Rarely enough to be noticed. They washed the dishes together. The next Sunday, Elias drove Miriam to church in his wagon. They had discussed it beforehand, with the seriousness of people planning a cattle crossing in bad weather. You are certain? He had asked at her gate. I am. People will talk. They already have. I can ride separate. And let them think I am ashamed of arriving beside you. No. Then help me up. He did. Pine Hollow Church sat at the edge of town, whitewashed and small, with a bell that sounded sweeter from far away than near. When Elias' wagon rolled into the yard, 3 conversations thinned into 2, then 1, then none worth pretending was natural. Miriam felt the attention like heat beneath her collar. Elias did not touch her arm or make a show of standing too close. He simply walked beside her with his hat in one hand and calm in every step. That helped more than any grand defense could have. Mrs. Bell greeted them first. Mrs. Vale, Mr. Mercer, fine morning. Fine morning, Miriam said. Mrs. Haskett, standing beside the church steps, gave a smile that seemed uncertain where to land. Her eyes flicked to Elias, then Miriam, then the space between them. Elias tipped his head. Mrs. Haskett. She flushed a little, perhaps remembering what she had said in the mercantile, perhaps not. Gossipers often had poor memories for the wounds they left behind. Inside, Miriam sat in her usual pew. Elias sat beside her. That was all. No hand-holding, no whisper, no public claim. Still, Miriam felt the weight of it, not because he was taking ownership, but because he was refusing to leave her alone under other people's eyes. When the hymn began, Elias sang quietly and very badly. Miriam stared straight ahead, lips pressed tight. He leaned slightly closer. What? You sing like a gate hinge. That is hurtful. It is true. I thought church required mercy. Not for that sound. His shoulders shook with silent laughter, and Miriam had to lower her face to hide her own. For the first time since arriving in Pine Hollow, She felt the room looking at her and did not shrink. After service, several neighbors approached with the cautious cheerfulness of people trying to repair what they would not admit they had damaged. Mr. Prout asked Elias about cattle prices. Mrs. Bell asked Miriam whether her garden was taking. The minister's wife invited Miriam to a quilting afternoon and did not once mention sugar, which Miriam considered an act of uncommon grace. Then Mrs. Haskett came forward. She held her gloves in both hands and looked less polished than usual. "Mrs. Vale, I wondered if you might need help with your preserves this season." Miriam almost laughed at the irony. "I do not have fruit trees." "No, of course, I only meant if you did." Mrs. Haskett looked truly uncomfortable now. "I suppose what I mean is, a woman alone on a claim has enough difficulty without folks making it harder with talk." The churchyard quieted around them, though everyone pretended not to listen. Miriam felt Elias still at her side. She could have struck back. Part of her wanted to. A clean little sentence, sharp enough to teach. But the older she grew, the more she suspected that every hurt did not require a wound in return. So she said, "Yes, she does." Mrs. Haskett lowered her eyes. "I was careless." "You were." Elias looked at Miriam, but she kept her gaze on Mrs. Haskett. Then Miriam added, "And I was too proud to admit careless words could still hurt me. So perhaps Pine Hollow has a surplus of lessons." Mrs. Haskett gave a weak smile. "Perhaps." Mrs. Bell cleared her throat. "The quilting is Thursday." Miriam glanced at her. "I may come." Mrs. Bell brightened. "Good." Elias said nothing until they were back in the wagon and past the first bend in the road. Then he looked sideways at her. "You handled that well." "I was tempted to handle it worse." "I noticed." "You would have stopped me." "No." "Good. I might have admired you privately." She laughed, leaning back as the wagon rolled through sunlight and dust. "You are a dangerous influence. I have been called worse by your rooster. Solomon has a limited vocabulary. And yet he makes his meaning clear." The road home stretched before them, open and golden. Blue rode in the wagon bed, his nose lifted to the wind. Miriam let the quiet sit for a while before speaking again. "I thought facing them would make me feel trapped," she said. "Did it?" "No," she looked at her gloved hands. "It made me realize I had given them more say over my life by hiding than I ever did by walking beside you." Elias nodded. "I am still learning," she added. "So am I." "What are you learning?" He guided the team around a rut, thinking, that loving a woman who can stand alone does not mean standing far away from her. Miriam turned toward him. He kept his eyes on the road, but his ears reddened slightly beneath his hat. She smiled. "That was another good answer. I should start writing them down." "You should, they may not return." They rode the rest of the way, with shoulders near enough to touch whenever the wagon jolted. At Miriam's gate, Elias helped her down. For a moment his hands remained at her waist, steady and warm. The memory of the calf rescue flashed between them, muddy and breathless. This time there was no frightened animal, no urgent work, no excuse. Only the road, the wagon, the quiet, and his hands letting go because she had not asked them to stay. Miriam surprised them both by catching one of his hands before it fell. "Come in for coffee," she said. "You sure?" "I am. No excuse." She looked toward her cabin, then back at him. "I would like your company." The plainness of it made his eyes soften. Inside, she set 2 cups on the table. The blue sugar jar stood in the center now, no longer hidden. Elias noticed and smiled. "You moved it?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was tired of pretending. I did not know where it was." He sat across from her, the afternoon light catching silver threads in his dark hair. Miriam poured the coffee. "I went to the quilting on Thursday." "You did?" "For half an hour." "How was it?" "Crowded." "That all?" Mrs. Bell speaks without breathing. Mrs. Haskett pricks her finger whenever she lies, which is more often than she thinks. The minister's wife asked whether I preferred blue or yellow cloth, and I nearly fled. Why? Because I realized I had no answer prepared for kindness. Elias' expression grew gentle. Miriam looked into her cup. I have lived so long ready to defend myself that I do not always know what to do when no one is attacking. I know something about that. Yes, she said softly, you do. A breeze moved through the open window. The curtain lifted, then settled. Elias looked around the cabin not as a man measuring what it lacked, but as one seeing what she had built. The sturdy shelf, the mended chair, the patched roof beam, the coffee tin, Aaron's Bible, the sugar jar. You have made a home here, he said. Miriam followed his gaze. I am trying. You have. Her throat tightened. It still feels unfinished. Most homes do. Does yours? He thought of Briar Creek, the second cup, the blanket, Marin's mint, blue sleeping between chairs. Yes, he said, but less when you are in it. She held his eyes across the table. Outside, Ruth clucked. A wagon creaked far away on the road. The day felt ordinary enough to let courage walk in unnoticed. Miriam rose, crossed to the shelf, and took down the blue sugar jar. She set it in front of Elias. I want to lend you something. He looked at it, then at her. Sugar. An excuse. His mouth curved. For what? For coming back tomorrow. Elias' expression changed. There was wonder in it, and a tenderness that made her want to look away and stay looking forever. He placed one hand over the jar. And if I do not need the excuse, then bring it anyway. Why? Because I am still learning how to ask without one. He stood slowly. Miriam did not move. The space between them felt smaller than it had a moment ago, not because he crowded it, but because she had invited him into it. He reached for her hand. May I? She nodded. He lifted her fingers and kissed the back of them. It was formal, almost old-fashioned. Yet it shook her more than any sudden kiss might have, because he had asked, and because she had said yes, and because neither of them had hidden behind sugar, weather, work, or dogs. Miriam's eyes stung. You make courtship difficult, she whispered. I thought I was doing well. You are, that is the difficulty. He laughed softly, still holding her hand. That evening, after Elias left with the sugar jar carefully tucked in his saddlebag, Miriam stood on her porch and watched him ride toward Briar Creek. The road between their homes lay clear beneath the setting sun, no longer a thing she feared being seen on. It was not surrender, she thought. It was choosing. And choosing was hers. Tell me in the comments, would you have known she was not really borrowing sugar? Or would you have believed, like Elias did, that a widow with an empty jar simply needed something sweet from a neighbor's pantry? The weeks that followed carried them toward late summer. Their courtship became known, then accepted, then gently teased by people who had apparently decided they had been in favor of it all along. Mr. Prout placed sugar on the counter every time Elias entered the mercantile, whether Elias asked for it or not. Mrs. Bell sent Miriam home with blue cloth for the quilt and claimed it was extra, though Miriam suspected charity dressed as convenience. Even Mrs. Haskett softened into usefulness, bringing a jar of peach preserves one afternoon and saying, with stiff dignity, that a woman could manage alone and still enjoy peaches. Miriam accepted the jar. Then she ate half of it with Elias that evening on his porch, spreading it over biscuits that were improving enough to threaten her reputation. You are becoming a baker, Elias said. Do not insult me. I meant it kindly. That is worse. Blue licked peach from Elias' thumb and looked hopeful for more. Miriam leaned back against the porch post, watching dusk settle over Briar Creek. Do you ever feel guilty? Elias knew what she meant without asking. For being happy, he said. She nodded. Sometimes. What do you do with it? He considered. I let it sit a while, then I remember grief is not a debt Marin asked me to keep paying. Miriam closed her eyes briefly. I want to believe that. You will. When you stop asking belief to arrive all at once. She opened her eyes, another good answer. I am improving. You are. They sat in warm silence. Then Elias said, Aaron loved you. Yes. Then I cannot imagine he wanted your life to end with his. Her breath caught. It was not a new thought. She had carried Aaron's own words with her across states and years. But hearing Elias say it, not as a rival to the dead, but as a man honoring the love that came before him, loosened something Miriam had not known she still held tight. She reached for his hand. He took it. No fear this time. Only sadness, gratitude, and the strange peace of finding that love could make room for memory without being swallowed by it. The trouble came 3 days later, not from gossip, not from fear, not from any person in Pine Hollow, but from the sky. A heat-heavy afternoon broke open with sudden thunder while Elias was riding the West Range. Miriam saw the clouds gather from her porch and felt the old storm fear stir in her bones. She told herself Elias knew weather. He knew land. He had survived worse than summer rain. Then Blue appeared at her gate alone. Wet. Barking. Miriam dropped the coffee cup in her hand. It shattered on the porch boards. Blue barked again, frantic now, then turned and ran toward Briar Creek before looking back to see if she followed. Miriam did not stop for bonnet, gloves, or pride. She ran for the wagon, heart pounding so hard she could barely hear the thunder. For all her brave talk of standing alone, for all her careful rules and hard-won independence, one truth rose clear above the storm as she snapped the reins and drove into the rain. She did not want a life where Elias Mercer could disappear from it. Not for gossip. Not for fear. Not for anything. Rain struck Miriam Vale's face so hard it felt like thrown gravel. The wagon wheels cut through mud, slipping in the ruts as she drove toward Briar Creek with Blue running ahead and barking over his shoulder. The dog knew where he was going. That frightened her more than if he had seemed lost. Blue was not searching. He was leading. Go on, Miriam shouted into the storm. Show me. Thunder rolled across the valley, deep enough to shake the reins in her hands. The mare tossed her head, unhappy with the weather, but Miriam kept her steady with every scrap of courage she owned. Water ran from her hair into her collar. Her dress clung heavy around her knees. She had left without gloves, without a coat, without even latching her cabin door properly. None of it mattered. Only Blue mattered. Only the empty saddle she feared finding mattered. Only Elias. The thought came so cleanly that it almost stopped her breath. Elias. Not Mr. Mercer, not the widower next door, not the man with the quiet kitchen and terrible coffee and a laugh that still sounded surprised to belong to him. Elias. The man she loved. She had not meant to say it, even inside herself. Pride had tried to keep the word locked away until it could be examined, measured, made safe. But the storm had no patience for careful women. It tore through the valley and left only what was true. Blue veered off the main track toward the west pasture. Miriam pulled the mare after him. The wagon lurched over a rut and one wheel struck a stone hard enough to send pain up her arm. She held fast. The pasture gate ahead stood half open, banging in the wind. Beyond it lay the lower grazing land, cut by gullies and scattered with brush. She saw Elias' horse first. The bay stood near a cottonwood with reins trailing, trembling but unhurt, eyes wide and white around the edges. Miriam's heart dropped. Elias, she shouted. The storm swallowed his name. Blue barked from the creek wash. Miriam climbed down before the wagon fully stopped. Mud grabbed at her boots. She stumbled, caught herself on the wheel and ran toward the dog. Rain blurred everything. The wash was swollen with brown water rushing between clay banks, not deep enough to be a river, but angry enough to take a careless step and make it final. Blue stood at the edge, barking downward. Miriam reached him and looked over. Elias lay on the lower bank near a tangle of roots, half in mud, one arm bent beneath him, his hat gone. A fallen branch had pinned his leg near the knee. He was trying to push himself upright and failing. For one terrible second, Miriam could not breathe. Then he lifted his head. "Miriam." The sound of his voice nearly broke her. "I am here," she called. His eyes sharpened even through the rain. "Stay back, bank soft." She almost laughed from sheer terror. "You are in no position to give instructions." "Never stopped me before." There he was, hurt, soaked, stubborn, and still Elias enough to argue. That steadied her. She dropped to her knees and studied the slope. The bank had given way under him, likely when he came down to check the wash or free some brush from the crossing. The branch lay across his leg, too heavy for him to move while half buried in mud. Water was rising inch by inch near his boots. Miriam looked around quickly. Rope, she needed rope. The wagon too far. Elias' saddle closer. She ran to his horse, speaking low so the frightened animal would not bolt. "Easy now, easy. I know you are scared. So am I." Her hands shook as she untied the rope from the saddle. The knot resisted, slick with rain. She cursed under her breath, then bit the rope loose with her teeth and yanked it free. When she returned to the wash, Elias had shifted, but the movement had cost him. His face looked gray beneath the rain. "You should not have come alone," he said. "I did not," she glanced at Blue. "I brought your better half." Blue barked once. Even through pain, Elias' mouth moved like he might smile. Miriam looped the rope around the cottonwood trunk near the edge and tied it tight. She thanked every mistake she had ever made with knots, every fence they had mended, every stubborn calf they had pulled from mud. All those ordinary days had been teaching her without announcing the lesson. "I am coming down," she said. "No." "Yes." "Miriam, that bank could slide." "Then I will choose where it slides." "That is not sense." "Neither is lying under a branch in a storm." He stopped arguing, which frightened her more than the branch. Miriam wrapped the rope around one wrist and climbed down backward, boots searching for holds in the wet clay. Twice the bank crumbled beneath her. Twice she dug her heels in and held. Mud smeared her skirt. Rain ran into her eyes. By the time she reached him, her hands burned from the rope. Elias tried to push himself up. "Careful." "Be quiet and let me look." "Yes, ma'am." His obedience would have been funny in any other weather. She crouched beside him. His leg was pinned but not crushed as badly as she feared. Blood showed through his trouser cloth near the shin, watered thin by rain, but there was no terrible wound, no break she could see from the angle. His shoulder looked worse, twisted from the fall. "What happened?" she asked. "Horse spooked when lightning hit close. I came off near the wash. Branch came down after." "You always did like doing chores the hard way." "I hope to impress you." "You failed." His eyes searched her face. "You are crying." "It is raining." "It is doing both." She wiped her cheek angrily with the back of her hand. "Do not notice things right now." "I notice you." The words were soft, almost lost beneath the rain. Miriam looked at him, and the storm seemed, for one breath, to fall farther away. Then the creek surged against the mud near his boot. She turned to the branch. "We need to move this." "You cannot lift it." "No, but I can make it roll." "Miriam." "I said be quiet." She wedged herself beside the branch and pushed. It did not move. She shifted lower, dug both boots into the mud, and pushed again with all her strength. The branch gave a groan but stayed. Elias reached with his good arm, trying to help. "Stop," she snapped. "You will hurt yourself worse." "I am already hurt." "Then do not become ambitious." His breath came short, but she saw pride flicker through the pain. "Yes, ma'am." Miriam looked up the bank. Blue. The dog barked from above. "Stay," she ordered. though she had no idea whether he understood this particular use of authority. "Stay right there." She unwound the loose end of rope and worked it beneath the smaller limbs of the fallen branch. Twice the rope slipped. The third time it caught. She tied it with shaking hands, then climbed halfway up the bank, braced her feet, wrapped the rope around her palms, and pulled. Nothing. She pulled again. The branch shifted an inch. Elias grunted as pressure changed on his leg. "Sorry," she cried. "Keep going." She pulled until her shoulders burned. Mud slid beneath her boots. Rain beat her back. The branch rolled another inch, then another, slow as a stubborn animal. With one final hard pull, it lurched sideways and freed his leg enough for Elias to drag himself clear. Miriam lost her footing and slid down the bank, landing beside him with a gasp. For a moment, neither moved. Then Elias laughed. It was not a sensible laugh. It was thin with pain and relief and disbelief. Miriam turned on him, soaked, muddy, furious, and shaking. "You are laughing. I was thinking. That is worse. You looked about ready to throw that branch into the next county. I still might. Remind me never to cross you in weather. Remind yourself never to fall into a creek wash." He looked at her then, truly looked, and the laughter faded. "You came," he said. "Blue came. You followed. Yes. You were afraid. Yes." The answer left her with no pride wrapped around it. Elias' eyes softened. "I am sorry. Do not apologize for being alive. I can apologize for frightening you. You should. I am sorry." "Good." Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his for one trembling second, because if she looked at him any longer from a distance, she would break apart. His good hand rose slowly and touched her wet sleeve. "Miriam," he whispered. "I need you to stand," she said, pulling back before tenderness swallowed the work. "Can you? With help. You will have it." The climb out of the wash took all the strength both of them had. Miriam tied the rope around Elias' waist and braced from above while he pushed with one leg and one arm. Blue barked encouragement or possibly criticism. Twice Elias slipped. Once Miriam screamed his name before the rope caught. By the time he reached the top, both of them collapsed in the wet grass, breathless and shaking. The bay horse nickered from near the tree. Miriam crawled to Elias' side. "Look at me." "I am looking." "Are you dizzy?" "A little." "Can you ride?" "Not well." "Then you will sit in the wagon." "My horse?" "I will tie him behind." "My saddle?" "Will not die of rain." His mouth twitched. "You become bossy in emergencies." "I become honest." That silenced him. She helped him to the wagon one slow step at a time. His arm came around her shoulders, heavy and warm, and though he leaned carefully, she felt the trust in it. He was not letting her carry his pride. He was letting her carry some of his weight. There was a difference. Once he was on the wagon seat, pale and wet but upright, she tied the bay behind and climbed beside him. Blue jumped into the back and shook rein across both of them. Elias closed his eyes. "Traitor." Miriam snapped the reins. "Hero." Both can be true. The drive back to Briar Creek felt longer than any distance she had ever crossed. Elias tried to stay awake. Miriam kept speaking to him, half comfort and half command. "Tell me about the sorrel." "Too nervous." "Like who?" "Like you when being kind to yourself." "That is rude for an injured man." "Truthful." "Stay awake and insult me properly." He managed a weak smile. "Your biscuits improved too fast, suspicious." "That was poor." "I am injured." "I noticed." At the house, getting him inside became another battle. Miriam brought him through the kitchen, sat him in the chair by the stove, and ordered him not to move with such force that even Blue obeyed and lay down immediately. She started a fire, fetched towels, heated water, and cut away the torn cloth near his shin with hands that had stopped shaking only because work had given them orders. The wound was ugly but shallow. His shoulder was strained, not broken. His leg would bruise badly, but he would keep it. He would keep it. He would stay. When that truth finally settled, Miriam had to grip the edge of the basin to remain standing. Elias, wrapped in a dry blanket, watched her. "You are shaking." "I am cold." "Come here." "No, I am busy." "Miriam." She turned on him. "You nearly died." His face went still. The words echoed in the kitchen. Rain drummed the roof. The fire cracked. Blue lifted his head and then wisely lowered it again. Miriam pressed both hands over her mouth, but it was too late. The fear had already escaped, and after fear came everything else. "You nearly died," she said again, softer but worse. "And I was at my cabin trying to prove I could stand alone while you were lying in the mud with water rising around you. That was not your fault. I know that." "Do you?" "Yes," her voice broke. "But I do not care whose fault it was. I care that there might have been a world 5 minutes from now where I came too late, and I cannot breathe when I think of it." Elias tried to stand. "Do not," she said. He stopped but reached out his hand. She looked at it for one heartbeat. Then she crossed the kitchen and took it. He pulled her down gently until she knelt before him, their joined hands between them. His fingers were cold despite the blanket. "I am here," he said. For now is all anyone gets. That is a cruel comfort. It is the only honest one I know." Tears finally spilled down her face. She hated them. She was grateful for them. She no longer had strength to decide. "I love you," she said. The words came out ragged and plain, nothing like she had imagined. No porch sunset, no careful speech, no blue sugar jar between them, just a wet kitchen, a bruised man, a frightened woman, and truth arriving because it refused to wait for beauty. Elias stared at her. Miriam's fear turned sharp. "Do not look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I startled you." "You did." "I just dragged you out of a creek wash. Surely nothing I say now should startle you." His thumb moved over her knuckles. "Miriam." She closed her eyes. "I love you too." The kitchen seemed still. Not silent, never empty. Rain kept falling. Fire kept breathing. Blue's tail thumped once against the floor as if he had been waiting for the obvious to be acknowledged. Miriam opened her eyes. Elias' face held pain, exhaustion, and a tenderness so complete it undid her. "You do," she whispered. "Yes." "For how long?" "Long enough that I have been making a fool of myself with spoons." A laugh broke through her tears. He smiled. "There it is." "What?" "I wondered if you remembered how." She shook her head, crying and laughing both. "That was my line. I borrowed it." "You borrow too much." "I am learning." She leaned forward carefully and rested her forehead against his hand. For a while they stayed that way. The storm, which had once carried death into both their lives, now beat against the roof of a house where both of them were alive enough to be afraid. Later, when Elias had eaten broth under protest, and Miriam had changed into one of his dry shirts, and a spare skirt Mrs. Bell had once left after a church sewing circle, she sat beside his chair and watched the fire burn low. "You cannot sleep alone tonight," she said. His brows lifted faintly. "In that chair," she added quickly. "Because of your shoulder, I will sit nearby." "Miriam." "Do not argue. I am still stronger than you for the moment." "I was going to say thank you." "Oh." He smiled. "But your warning is noted." She set a pillow behind his shoulder and covered him with another blanket. Then she sat in the second chair, the one that had waited 9 years for a reason to belong. Blue settled between them by the stove. Rain softened after midnight. Elias drifted in and out of sleep. Each time he woke, Miriam was still there, chin tipped toward her chest, one hand resting near his on the chair arm. In the dark, he thought of Marin, not with guilt this time, with gratitude and sorrow braided together. He thought of the child he had never held, of the life that had ended, of the life somehow still asking to begin. Near dawn, Miriam woke to Elias watching her. "You should sleep," she murmured. "I did. Poorly. Better than in the mud." She gave him a look. He reached weakly toward the table beside him. The blue sugar jar sat there. Miriam must have brought it in from her wagon at some point during the night. He did not remember seeing her do it. "Did you bring that?" "Yes." "Why?" "I do not know." She looked at the jar. "Maybe I thought if I had an excuse with me, I would not be afraid of having none." Elias held her gaze. The early light made the kitchen tender. He wanted to ask her then, not because fear had rushed him, not because near loss had mistaken itself for certainty, but because near loss had stripped away the last cowardice from certainty already present. Still, he waited. A proposal should not be made while a woman was soaked, exhausted, and sitting beside an injured man who could not stand properly. Miriam deserved more than fear wearing a ring. So he only said, "When I can walk to your porch, I am coming to borrow something." Her eyes narrowed softly. "What?" "I have not decided." "You have?" "Yes." "What is it?" He looked at the sugar jar. Then at her. "You will know when I ask properly." Miriam's breath caught. Outside, the storm clouds began to break apart, and a thin line of gold opened over the eastern hills. Blue lifted his head, yawned, and settled again between the two chairs. The house that had once held one plate, one cup, and one lonely man now held mud by the door, wet clothes by the stove, two frightened hearts, and a promise not yet spoken. For Elias Mercer and Miriam Vale, morning came slowly. But it came. Elias Mercer healed badly because he healed impatiently. By the second day after the storm, he had decided his shoulder was merely sore, his leg only bruised, and Miriam Vale's warnings overly dramatic. By the third day, he attempted to cross the kitchen without the walking stick she had placed beside his chair. He made it 4 steps. Then Blue lifted his head from the hearth. Miriam turned from the stove with one brow raised, and Elias had the sudden sense that both dog and woman had been waiting for him to prove himself foolish. "Sit down," Miriam said. "I was only going to the basin." "The basin is not lonely." "I am capable of walking to it." "You are capable of falling on your face between here and there." "That seems harsh." "That seems likely." Blue gave a soft huff that sounded suspiciously like agreement. Elias pointed at him. "You were on my side once." "He has chosen sense," Miriam said. "He has chosen tyranny." Miriam crossed the kitchen, took his good arm, and guided him back to the chair by the stove. She did it without making him feel small, which was a talent Elias had begun to understand was rarer than beauty and twice as valuable. Still, he frowned as he sat. "I have run cattle with a fever." "And was that wise?" "No." "Then why offer it as evidence?" "Because I have limited arguments." At last, honesty. He tried to look wounded. She tried not to smile. Neither succeeded fully. For a week, Miriam came every morning and left after supper. She told herself it was proper because Elias needed tending. She told herself the county could gossip all it wanted about broth, bandages, and a man too stubborn to rest. But after the 4th day, when Mrs. Bell herself rode out with a basket of clean cloths and found Miriam calmly hanging Elias' wash behind the house, the county's opinion changed from suspicion to something closer to approval. Mrs. Bell looked at Elias through the kitchen window, where he sat under a blanket with the expression of a captured outlaw. "He looks miserable," she said. "He is recovering," Miriam replied. "Same thing for a man." Miriam laughed before she could stop herself. Mrs. Bell's face softened. You look tired, dear. I am fine. Yes, that is what tired women say when they do not wish to be fussed over. She handed Miriam the basket. There is bread in there too, and apple butter. Mr. Prout sent coffee. Mrs. Haskett sent preserves. Miriam blinked. Mrs. Haskett. She said a woman can manage alone and still accept preserves twice if the first jar was good. Despite herself, Miriam smiled. That sounds like her trying. It is. Pine Hollow trying is not always elegant, but it is sometimes useful. Mrs. Bell looked toward the pasture, where the repaired fence stretched between the two claims, straight and sunlit. He cares for you, she said. Miriam's hands tightened around the basket handle. Yes. And you for him. Miriam did not answer right away. She was learning that not every truth needed armor. Yes, she said again. Mrs. Bell nodded, satisfied, and did not press. That, Miriam thought, was the kindest thing the woman had ever done. Inside, Elias looked at the basket when Miriam carried it in. Reinforcements. Bread, coffee, apple butter, preserves. From who? The county. Should I be concerned? Only if you plan to survive on your own cooking. I was doing fine. You were salting beans like punishment. That phrase has traveled too far. It deserves to. Elias watched as she set the gifts on the table. There was flour on her sleeve, a loose strand of hair at her cheek, and weariness beneath her eyes. She had spent the week tending him, tending her own claim, feeding stock on both sides, and refusing every offer to stay the night because she said she had a cabin and meant to sleep in it. He loved that about her. He hated how tired it made her. Miriam, he said. She turned, what? Stay home tomorrow. Her face closed by half an inch. You are dismissing me. No. It sounded like it. Then I said it poorly. You did. He drew a slow breath, gathering patience, which was harder than gathering cattle and less familiar. I mean, you should rest. Your own place needs you. I can manage a day. She folded her arms. Can you? Yes. You tried to walk without the stick this morning. A man can improve by tomorrow. A man can also become worse by pretending. He smiled faintly. You know that from experience. Her arms lowered. The words had been light, but they had touched something true. She looked toward the window where her cabin sat beyond the fence, small under the wide sky. Yes, she said, I suppose I do. Elias leaned forward as much as his shoulder allowed. I am not asking you to leave because I want less of you here. I am asking because loving me should not become another chore you prove you can carry. Miriam looked back at him. The kitchen went quiet except for the stove and Blue's soft breathing. You keep saying things that make arguing difficult, she said. I have been saving them while trapped in this chair. It is annoying. I thought it might be. She sat across from him at the table. I do not know how to do this halfway. I noticed. If I care for someone, I start making lists in my head. Who needs feeding? What needs mending? Which jar is low? Which wound needs washing? It is easier than sitting with how frightened I am. Elias' gaze softened. I know. I cannot decide whether I am strong because I keep going, or afraid because I cannot stop. Could be both. She gave a tired laugh. That is inconvenient. Most true things are. He reached across the table with his good hand. She gave him hers. I do not want you as a nurse, he said. I should hope not, I am bossy. I want you as Miriam, the woman who owns her land, argues with roosters, burns fewer biscuits than advertised, and frightens me half to death by pulling me out of creeks. Her mouth trembled. You frighten easily. Only when I realize what I might have missed. They held hands across the table, the county's bread between them, the sugar jar on the shelf, and Blue sleeping near the stove as though nothing in the world had ever been broken. The next day, Miriam stayed home. She did not do it easily. She woke before sunrise, dressed, and stood with her hand on the cabin door latch for nearly a minute before forcing herself to turn away. Elias had asked for rest, not distance, not abandonment, rest. So she rested in the only way she knew how, which meant repairing 2 shirts, organizing seeds, cleaning the coffee tin, and sitting on the porch for almost 10 entire minutes without standing up. By noon, she realized Elias had been right. She was tired down to the bone. The kind of tired that work alone did not explain. She brewed coffee and sat at the table with Aaron's Bible, Elias' note, and the blue sugar jar before her. The 3 things looked like pieces of different lives that somehow belonged in the same room. Aaron had loved her first. He had left her with grief, yes, but also with the courage to keep living. Elias did not erase that. He did not ask to stand where Aaron had stood. He stood in the life that remained, hat in hand, asking if there was room beside her. Miriam touched the sugar jar. "Choosing again is not betrayal," she said aloud. The cabin heard her. This time it seemed to agree. That afternoon, she did something she had avoided since arriving in Montana. She took her claim papers from the trunk and laid them on the table. Her name sat there in ink, legal and plain. Miriam Vale. Not Aaron's widow. Not a woman-shaped problem. Not a future wife waiting to be assigned. Miriam Vale. She ran her finger over the letters. Then she folded the papers carefully and placed them in the Bible, not hiding them, not worshiping them, but keeping them where promises belonged. By evening, she walked the fence line alone. The repaired post stood solid beneath her hand. On one side lay Elias' ranch, with its barn, corral, and house that no longer looked so dead from a distance. On the other lay her claim, rough and bright with struggle. The fence no longer felt like a warning between them. It felt like a seam. 2 pieces held together, without one becoming the other. She slept deeply that night. The following morning, Miriam woke to a knock at her door. Not a rooster. Not blue scratching. A knock. She opened it to find Elias standing on her porch with his hat in one hand, walking stick in the other, and a look of stubborn concentration that said the half-mile journey had been harder than he intended to admit. Blue stood beside him, chest lifted like a witness to greatness. Miriam stared. "You walked here." Some. I rode to the fence. And then walked from there. With that leg. It complained. So will I. I expected that. She stepped onto the porch, torn between fury and joy. Elias Mercer, if you have undone your healing for pride, I will personally drag you back to your chair and tie you there. His mouth twitched. That is not why I came. No. What did you come for? He lifted his empty hand. I came to borrow something. Miriam's breath caught. The morning light rested around him, soft and gold. He looked pale still, bruised at the edge of one cheek, moving carefully to hide the pull in his shoulder. But his eyes were clear, steady, full of the thing they had both been circling since the first borrowed cup. She leaned one hand against the doorframe. What do you need? Sugar. The word was quiet. The world seemed to stop. Miriam looked at him, then passed him to the road, the repaired fence, the ranch beyond, the claim beneath her feet. Every borrowed item, every excuse, every storm, every foolish hen and crooked rail and black cup of coffee seemed to gather on that porch with them. You do not use sugar, she said. No. Never have. No. Then why? Elias took one careful step closer, using the walking stick not as a weakness to hide, but as the truth of the man he was in that moment. Bruised, living, asking. Because I wanted to stand at your door and tell the truth the way you once stood at mine. Miriam's fingers tightened on the frame. He lowered himself slowly onto one knee. The motion clearly hurt. Miriam gasped and reached for him, but he lifted one hand. Let me do this badly if I must, he said. Tears filled her eyes at once. "You foolish man." "Yes." "You are injured." "Yes." "You could have asked from a chair." "I have hidden behind chairs, doors, grief, manners, weather, work, and sugar long enough." He reached into his coat pocket and drew out a small ring. It was not ornate, a simple gold band, old enough to have known another life. Miriam recognized it before he explained, and her hand flew to her mouth. "It was my mother S," Elias said. "Not Marin's. I would not ask you to wear another woman's promise. This one came from a marriage that lasted 40 years and still left my father saying her name like a blessing." Miriam's tears spilled freely now. Elias held the ring between them. "Miriam Vale, I do not want to own your land. I do not want to quiet your voice. I do not want a wife who comes because the work is too hard or the county is too loud or loneliness made the choice for her." His own voice thickened, but he kept going. "I want the woman who can stand alone and still chooses to open the door. I want a life where your claim and mine are worked with both our names respected. I want coffee black, sugar unused, blue spoiled, Ruth accused fairly, and Solomon kept at a safe distance from my boots." A laugh broke through her sob. Elias smiled up at her. "I want you to come home without inventing a reason," he said. "And I want to have the right to come to you the same way, not as a rescuer, not as an owner, as a husband if you will have me." Miriam could barely see him through tears. The porch beneath her feet was the same porch she had scrubbed, patched, and claimed. The land behind her was still hers. The woman standing there was still herself. Nothing in his asking took that away. It only offered a hand beside it. She stepped forward and sank to her knees in front of him before he could protest. "Miriam, your dress." "Be quiet." "Yes, ma'am." She laughed and cried at once, reaching for his face with both hands. "I love you," she said. "I love your terrible coffee and your patient hands and your foolish pride. I love how you let me be strong without making me be alone. I love that you came to borrow sugar you do not need because you finally learned how to ask for what you do." His eyes shone. "And yes," she whispered, "yes, Elias Mercer, I will marry you." Blue barked so loudly both of them startled. From the shed, Solomon crowed with terrible timing. Elias closed his eyes. Even the rooster objects. "He is blessing us." "He sounds furious." "He always does." Miriam held out her hand. Elias slid the ring onto her finger. It fit a little loose, but she curled her hand around it as if she could keep it there by will alone. Then she leaned forward and kissed him. Not on the cheek this time. The kiss was gentle, trembling, and full of all the things sugar had once been asked to carry. Loneliness, courage, grief, laughter, wanting, choosing. When they parted, Elias rested his forehead against hers. "I cannot get up gracefully," he admitted. "I know. I may need help." "You have it." Together, laughing softly, they managed to stand. Miriam took his arm and guided him to the porch chair while Blue danced around their feet with dangerous enthusiasm. Elias sat with a pained sigh, but a smile he made no attempt to hide. Miriam went inside and returned with the blue sugar jar. She placed it in his lap. "There," she said, "you borrowed sugar." "So I did. Now what will you do with it?" He looked at the jar, then at her. "Keep it full." "For what?" "For every day one of us forgets that asking is braver than pretending." Miriam touched the ring on her finger. "Then we will need a large supply." "I already bought extra." She laughed. "Of course you did." They sat on her porch until the sun climbed higher, speaking of practical things because Joy needed somewhere to put its hands. A winter wedding or autumn, her claim requirements, his cattle, whether they would live in one house or move between both until the spring, whether the repaired fence should stay up. "It should stay," Miriam said. Elias looked at her, as a boundary. As a reminder, it does not divide us anymore, it shows where two lives learn to meet. He nodded. "Then it stays. And my name stays on my land." Yes, and I will still make decisions about my stock. Yes, and Solomon stays. Elias paused. Miriam raised a brow. He sighed, yes. Say it kindly. Solomon stays. Better, but I reserve the right to fear him. That is fair. Near noon, Elias asked to be taken back to Briar Creek before Miriam decided to fetch a rope and tie him to her own chair instead. She drove him in the wagon, his horse tied behind, Blue sprawled at their feet. At the fence, he looked back toward her cabin, then at the straight posts running between their properties. I used to think fences were for keeping things apart, he said. Miriam held the reins lightly. The ring caught sunlight on her hand. Sometimes they are for giving things a place to lean. When they reached Briar Creek, Elias insisted on walking from the wagon to the porch with dignity. He made it 3 steps before Miriam offered her arm. This time, he took it without pretending. Inside, the kitchen waited. 2 cups on the shelf. 2 chairs by the stove. Marin's mint drying in a small bundle near the window. A loaf from Mrs. Bell on the table. A sugar tin in the pantry, full as ever. Miriam set the blue jar beside it. Elias watched her. What? She asked. Nothing. That is rarely true. I was thinking the house looks different. She looked around. How? He took her hand, thumb brushing the ring. Less like it is waiting. Miriam's heart softened. Outside, Blue settled on the porch, guarding both the house and the road. Beyond the fence, her cabin stood in the sunlight, no longer a lonely proof and not yet abandoned to memory. It was still part of her, part of them. A home she had built alone and would now bring into a life chosen freely. That evening, as they sat side by side near the stove, Elias asked if she regretted saying yes so quickly. Miriam looked at him as if he had asked whether Ruth was innocent. I took half a year to say yes. You did. I started deciding the day I told you I did not use sugar. He smiled. That early. No, I started fighting it that early. And when did you stop fighting? She looked at the blue jar on the shelf. When you returned my excuse and waited for me to choose. Elias lifted her hand and kissed the ring. Miriam leaned her head against the back of the chair, tired and peaceful in a way that still felt new. The house grew quiet around them. But not empty. Never empty now. They married in late October, when the cottonwoods along Briar Creek turned gold, and the morning air carried the first clean warning of winter. Miriam Vale had insisted on October because she refused to be married in weather cold enough to freeze sense out of a woman. Elias Mercer had suggested December, mostly because he thought a winter wedding sounded peaceful, and because he had not fully considered how many layers of wool would be involved. Miriam settled the matter at her kitchen table with her claim papers, a church calendar, and the blue sugar jar sitting between them. October, she said. Elias looked at the calendar. You say that like a judge. I am open to discussion. Are you? No. He smiled. October then. The wedding was held at the repaired fence line between their 2 properties. That had been Miriam's idea too, though she tried to say it casually when she first mentioned it. It seems practical, she said, halfway between both houses. Elias looked at the straight posts, the rails they had set together, the gate he had widened the week before so wagons could pass more easily between the claims. Practical, he repeated. Yes. Nothing sentimental in it. Certainly not. He touched the top rail where her hand had rested months before, when she told him she needed time. Good. I would hate for our wedding to be sentimental. Miriam gave him a look. You are learning to tease too well. I had a capable teacher. You say that whenever you want forgiveness. Does it work? Too often. So the fence became their altar. On the morning of the wedding, Pine Hollow arrived in wagons and on horseback, carrying pies, preserves, quilts, bread, coffee, and more advice than either bride or groom had requested. Mrs. Bell came first, wearing a blue hat with 2 feathers that looked startled by their own importance. Mr. Prout brought a sack of sugar as a wedding gift and claimed, with a straight face, that he could not imagine 2 people who needed it more. Elias stared at the sack. Miriam laughed so hard she had to sit down on the porch step. Mrs. Haskett brought peach preserves and a small apology wrapped inside a stiff smile. "I was thinking," she said to Miriam while the men arranged benches near the fence, "that a woman can manage alone and still be worth celebrating when she chooses not to." Miriam looked at her for a quiet moment. Mrs. Haskett's face reddened. "That came out poorly." "No," Miriam said, "that came out true." The woman's shoulders dropped with relief. "Well, then I shall stop while I am ahead." "That would be wise." They both smiled, and something old and sharp between them finally dulled. Miriam dressed in her cabin, not Elias' house, because she wanted to leave as herself before she entered any shared life. Mrs. Bell helped fasten the buttons, though Miriam could have managed them. For once, she allowed the help without feeling diminished by it. Her dress was cream-colored, simple, with blue ribbon at the waist because Mrs. Bell had insisted the color suited her, and because Miriam secretly knew it did. Her hair was pinned softly at the back of her neck. On the table sat Aaron's Bible, her folded claim papers, and the blue sugar jar. She looked at all 3 before stepping outside. Aaron had been part of the road that brought her here. Her land had been the proof she needed when nobody trusted her strength. And the sugar jar, foolish little thing, had taught her that wanting a hand to hold was not the same as giving up her own. Mrs. Bell noticed where she was looking. "You ready, dear?" Miriam drew a long breath. "Yes." Outside, the valley waited in gold light. Elias stood by the fence in a dark coat, hat in his hands, his legs still a little stiff from the storm but strong enough to stand. Blue sat beside him wearing a blue ribbon tied loosely around his neck. He looked dignified for nearly 4 seconds before trying to scratch it off. Solomon stood on Miriam's side of the fence, suspicious of the gathering. Elias glanced at the rooster and leaned toward Mr. Prout. "If that bird charges during the vows, I expect assistance." Mr. Prout whispered back, "You are on your own, I have seen him fight." Elias sighed, "Coward. I prefer living." Miriam saw Elias' mouth twitch just before she reached him. He turned then. All the teasing left his face. For a heartbeat, he looked like the lonely man she had first seen at the fence months ago. The widower with the quiet house, the careful eyes, and the habit of standing far enough back from life that it could not easily wound him. Then his eyes warmed and she saw the man he was becoming, not healed because grief had vanished, not happy because sorrow had been erased, but open, brave, willing. She stepped beside him at the fence. "You look frightened," she whispered. "I am. Good." He looked at her. "Good. I would hate to marry a foolishly calm man. I am foolish in other areas." "That is true." The minister began, and the valley quieted. The vows were simple. Elias promised to honor Miriam's heart, her work, her name, and the life she had built before him. Miriam promised to walk beside Elias in joy, labor, weather, grief, and laughter, without turning love into ownership or independence into loneliness. When the minister asked for the ring, Blue barked. Everyone looked down. The ring was tied to his ribbon. Elias frowned. Who trusted him with that? Miriam pressed her lips together. "You did." "I was recovering." "You were confident." "I was mistaken." Blue wagged, pleased with the attention and entirely uninterested in the seriousness of jewelry. Elias knelt with some difficulty, untied the ring, and stood again to a ripple of laughter from the neighbors. He slid the band onto Miriam's finger, where it rested beside his mother's old ring, now fitted properly by the blacksmith's wife. Miriam placed a plain gold ring on Elias' hand. His fingers closed around hers. The minister pronounced them husband and wife beneath a sky so clear, it seemed scrubbed clean for the occasion. Elias looked at Miriam, asking without words. She smiled. This kiss was still gentle, still clean and proper for a churchyard crowd, but there was nothing uncertain in it. It carried the whole road between them. The first empty cup, the borrowed saw, the storm table, the hidden sugar jar, the creek wash, the porch proposal, the long lesson that needing someone did not make either of them weak. When they parted, Pine Hollow applauded. Solomon crowed furiously. Miriam laughed against Elias' shoulder. He approves. He objects. He expresses every feeling the same way. Then he and I have something in common. No, Miriam said softly, you have improved. The celebration spread across both sides of the fence. That pleased her more than she expected. Pies sat on Elias' side. Coffee boiled on hers. Children chased one another through the gate. Men stood near the corral talking cattle. Women admired Miriam's cabin and then Elias' garden, where Marin's mint had been trimmed and tied into small bundles for guests to take home if they wished. Miriam had wondered whether that would hurt. It did a little, but not badly. Marin's mint belonged to the story of the house. Aaron's Bible sat in Miriam's cabin. The dead were not erased that day. They were honored quietly as people who had loved well enough to leave the living capable of loving again. During supper, Mr. Prout stood and cleared his throat with great importance. I have known Elias Mercer near 9 years, he announced, and in all that time I never saw the man buy sugar until Mrs. Vale moved in down the road. Several neighbors laughed. Elias covered his eyes with one hand. Mr. Prout continued, enjoying himself too much. At first I thought he had taken up baking, which would have been alarming for the whole county. Then I thought perhaps he had found a sweet tooth late in life. But now I see the truth plainly. Miriam leaned toward Elias. Should we stop him? No, he has momentum now. It would be dangerous. Mr. Prout raised his coffee cup. Some folks borrow what they lack. These two borrowed what they were too proud to name. May they never run short again. For once, nobody teased the storekeeper for getting sentimental. They drank to it. Later, Mrs. Haskett came to Miriam with a slice of cake and a careful expression. I hope you know people spoke because we were curious, not because we meant harm. Miriam took the plate. I know. That does not excuse it. No, Miriam said gently, it does not. Mrs. Haskett nodded. I will try to do better. That is enough for today. The woman smiled, then glanced toward Elias, who was trying to stop Blue from stealing a biscuit off a child's plate. He seems a good man. He is. And you are still your own woman. Miriam looked toward her cabin, her land, the fence, then back at Elias. Yes, she said, I am. That answer felt different now. Less like a defense. More like peace. By evening, wagons began to leave, one by one, rolling down the road in clouds of gold dust. Mrs. Bell kissed Miriam's cheek. Mr. Prout shook Elias' hand too hard. Mrs. Haskett left the remaining preserves with solemn ceremony. The minister wished them many years of kindness, which Miriam thought was a better blessing than happiness, because kindness could carry people through days happiness could not manage. When the last wagon disappeared, the valley grew quiet. But it was not the old quiet. Elias and Miriam stood by the fence with Blue between them, watching sunset settle over both claims. Solomon strutted near the shed, apparently satisfied that all visitors had been driven away by his authority. Ruth slipped through the gate and headed toward Elias' barley shed. Elias pointed, there, crime. Miriam followed his gaze. She is exploring. She is trespassing. She lives here now too. Elias looked at her. Does she? Miriam slipped her hand into his. So do I. The words settled warmly. They did not move into one house that night as if marriage erased all practical things. Miriam's cabin still held her clothes, her Bible, her claim papers, her coffee tin, and the stubborn proof of what she had built. Elias' house held the stove, the 2 chairs, the mint by the back step, and the kitchen that had learned to laugh again. For the first winter, they used both. Some nights they slept at Briar Creek because Elias' cattle needed watching. Some nights they stayed at Miriam's cabin because the hens were contrary and Solomon could not be trusted with twilight authority. By spring, they had built a wider gate in the fence and laid a proper path between the houses with flat stones from the creek bed. The county still saw 2 claims on paper. Elias and Miriam saw one life with 2 doors. Miriam proved up her claim in her own name before summer. Elias drove her to the land office, waited beside her and said nothing when she signed. He did not need to. His silence was not absence. It was respect. When the clerk asked whether the property would now be folded into her husband's ranch, Miriam looked at Elias. He looked back calmly. "No," she said, "it will remain mine." Then she smiled, "and ours by choice." The clerk, being wiser than he looked, wrote exactly what needed writing and offered congratulations without further comment. The years did not turn perfect. No honest home does. There were hard winters, sick calves, burnt biscuits, sharp words spoken from tired mouths, and apologies made before pride could build a wall too high. There were mornings when Miriam missed Aaron with a grief so sudden she had to sit down. There were evenings when Elias stood by Marin's mint and grew quiet. Neither asked the other to forget. That became one of the strongest parts of their marriage. Love did not require them to become new people without history. It only asked them not to let history lock every door. The sugar remained. A large tin sat in Elias' pantry. The blue jar stayed on Miriam's table for a while, then moved between houses so often that neither could remember where it belonged. Sometimes Elias would lift it and say, "I need to borrow this." "For what?" Miriam would ask. "For walking past you twice." Poor excuse. Effective one. Other times Miriam would arrive at Briar Creek holding the jar and say, "I seem to be out of sugar." "You do not use sugar," Elias would answer. Still, he would say, and open the door wider. They never lost the joke. But it became more than a joke. It became their reminder that people can hide whole hearts inside small requests: a cup of coffee, a spoon, a blanket, a little sugar no one uses. By the next autumn, the 2 houses had changed in ways, both small and unmistakable. At Briar Creek, 2 coats hung by the door. One dark, one blue. 2 cups sat on the shelf, and a third waited for visitors because Miriam said a home ought to expect kindness before it arrived. The second chair by the stove no longer looked like a memory. It looked like a place. At Miriam's cabin, Elias' gloves lay near the basin. A pair of his boots stood by the porch when the mud was bad. Aaron's Bible remained on the trunk, and beside it sometimes, Elias left wild mint tied with string. Blue slept wherever Miriam was most likely to drop crumbs. Solomon never learned to like Elias, but he did learn to tolerate him as a permanent inconvenience. Ruth continued a life of theft and bold exploration, eventually raising a brood of hens with similarly loose ideas about property. One evening, near the anniversary of their wedding, Elias came in from the barn to find Miriam standing in his kitchen, looking at the shelf where the sugar tin rested. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Thinking." "That sounds dangerous." "It often is." He crossed to her side. "About what?" She touched the tin lightly. "About the first day I told you I did not use sugar." "You looked terrified." "I was. So was I." She turned. "You." "A woman told me she had been coming to my door for me and not for my pantry. A stronger man might have handled it gracefully." "You stood there like a fence post." "I felt like one." Miriam smiled and leaned into him. He put an arm around her shoulders, careful and easy now, as natural as breathing. "I thought needing someone meant losing myself," she said. "I thought loving someone meant giving grief another target. And now..." He looked around the kitchen. The 2 cups, The two chairs, blue by the stove, her coat by his. The smell of coffee, bread, mint, and evening rain beginning softly against the windows. Now I think we were both poor judges of weather. She laughed. That is your wisdom. It is what I have. It will do. Rain tapped the roof, gentle this time. Not a storm to fear, not a memory to survive, just weather moving over a home that knew how to hold two people and all their yesterdays. Miriam reached for the sugar tin and opened it. Elias raised a brow. You taking sugar now? No. Then why open it? She took a spoonful and dropped it into his black coffee. He stared at the cup in betrayal. Miriam. She smiled sweetly. Marriage requires sacrifice. That is not coffee anymore. It is symbolic. It is ruined. It is sweet. I do not use sugar. She leaned up and kissed his cheek. Neither do I. Blue thumped his tail. Elias looked at the cup, then at his wife, then at the rain shining dark on the window. He took one brave sip and made such a wounded face that Miriam laughed until she had to hold the table. That laugh filled the kitchen, ran up into the rafters, and seemed to settle into every board of the house. Elias set the cup down. I will forgive this because I love you. I accept. But I am borrowing your coffee tomorrow. For what? For revenge. Then I will be ready. He pulled her gently into his arms, and she came willingly, not because she had nowhere else to stand, but because she had chosen that place. Outside, the fence between the properties held firm beneath the rain, no longer a division, no longer a warning, but a line where two lonely lives had met and become brave together. If this story warmed your heart, leave a like for Elias and Miriam, and subscribe for more romantic Wild West stories where lonely hearts find home on the frontier. Years later, folks in Pine Hollow still told the story of the widow who kept borrowing sugar and the rancher who never used it. They told it with laughter, as people do when they think they understand the sweet part. But Elias and Miriam knew the truth. The sugar had never been sweet because it was sugar. It was sweet because it gave two frightened people a way to knock. A way to stay. A way to come home. And in the end, the bravest thing they ever did was not proving they could live alone. It was admitting they no longer wanted to.